There's a freezer here that I want to get into. It's locked, but...
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to all those affected by this dark case. Henriette Such was born in 1984 in Hungary to mother Mary. She left her motherland in the late 2000s. This was after the marriage with the father of two of her three children ended. She spent a few years in Germany before arriving in the UK in 2012. There she worked as an escort in East London. After briefly returning home to give her third child up for adoption, she then moved to Birmingham in 2014 with a Hungarian man who badly maltreated her. He promised her work and opportunities to better her life, but that never materialized. Instead, he disappeared with her passport and birth certificate. This effectively left her stranded in the country. Betrayed and desperate, Henriette eventually made her way to London, and there she found herself in the throes of yet another horrifically toxic relationship. Luckily though, this time she got out faster. When she then became homeless, she found help and support at the Welcome Centre. This is a charity organisation based in Ilford. The people who knew Henriette well described her as cheery, affectionate and determined, despite the circumstances that she was in. Henriette also really enjoyed drawing. The people who knew her thought it was a mechanism for escape, taking her mind somewhere else as she was extremely vulnerable during that time of her life. Despite this, Henriette pulled herself together and had plans to transform her life. She enjoyed group activities and was actively seeking to start a college education. But that was when she came under the influence of a very violent man, a man named David Dallison. He forced Henriette back into escorting, a profession she'd barely just escaped. He used illicit substances and violence as a method of control. Things came to a head in January of 2016. She was admitted to hospital for falling from the 5th floor balcony of the Ilford Tower block. The apartment she fell from belonged to Dallison. She suffered multiple injuries, fractured ribs and shoulder, and was admitted to hospital. When Henriette Such was at her lowest, she then met Zahid Yunus. Mirachan Mustafa, otherwise known as Jan or MJ, was born in 1986. She was of Turkish Cypriot descent. She grew up with a cousin, Aisha Hussein, under the watchful eyes of their mother. MJ worked as a waitress at Upton Park, West Ham's football ground. She was a proud mother of 3 children. One of MJ's biggest dreams was to help people who were struggling. She was very loving, she was cheery and kind. It was said she would do anything for those that she cared about. However, things started going downhill when MJ started having money troubles. She had to send her 3 children to live with a family member while she struggled to stabilize her situation. Things went from bad to worse when she got evicted from her apartment for not paying her bills for the month. A combination of dyslexia and her struggling financial situation meant that things spiraled easily and quickly. She turned to alcohol and illicit substances, and she started hanging out with people she met at the Custom House. It was there she met Zahid Yunus. Canning Town is home to new residential tower developments in London. These are aimed at providing affordable housing to low to mid-income families. The area has a strong Turkish culture and is littered with pizzerias, fast food spots, hotels and waterside restaurants. And it is a small flat on a street in this vibrant part of East London that Henriette and MJ lived in after they met Zahid. 38-year-old Zahid Yunus was cut from the same cloth as the most violent and evil elements of London. He was aggressive, arrogant, and had a history of maltreating and violating women, a history of grooming and even kidnapping. And for years, he simply got away with it. The earliest recorded account of his behaviour was in 2001. He started seeing a 16-year-old college student, and she eventually got pregnant. At first, he seemed very attentive and paid me lots of attention, she said. And then he changed. He became, and I quote, quite extremely paranoid about me looking at other men. At some point, Eunice even locked her in a cupboard. He would only let her out when she agreed to have intimate relations with him. He continued to terrorize the girl for years, and at some point even threatened the girl's mother. On one occasion, he even appeared in her home and grabbed her by the neck. He threatened to take her child to Pakistan. Around this same time, authorities reported that Zahid disturbingly was also grooming a 12-year-old girl. Eunice was 19 at the time, and after repeating the same pattern of attention, paranoia, and maltreatment, he forced the underage girl into an unofficial marriage with him in 2004 at a mosque. The girl, who was 14 at the time of the marriage, said she didn't speak Arabic, and therefore it was only after the ceremony was over that she realised what had happened. Eunice was subsequently arrested and charged with assault, false imprisonment, violations of a child, and 26 other charges. But he was still acquitted by the court after his trial. He only pleaded guilty to around 6 of the 26 charges brought before the court, and therefore he was sentenced to just 30 months in prison. According to another 17-year-old girl, Eunice went back to his old habit not long after he left prison. He moved himself into her flat and began to hover around her when anybody came to visit. He then stopped her from leaving her flat, and eventually the real maltreatment started. According to her, it was brutal, systemic, and constant. He used hammers, sharp kitchen implements, barbecue forks, and lighters. During this time, she suffered multiple injuries. At one stage, she was unable to walk after she was thrown out of her window. He kept her from reporting him by threatening to end her family's lives, and threatening to distribute videos of her being violated by him. Thankfully, her mother grew worried enough to call the police, and there was enough evidence to charge Eunice slightly more seriously this time. However, he was sentenced to only 5 years in prison. This was because of his pleas and admitting to the charges of assault, of grievous bodily harm, and unlawful wounding. Eunice was sentenced in 2008, and when he got out, he was somehow declared a medium risk and monitored by the police. Henriette Such met Eunice in the hospital she was admitted to after an incident with her ex, David Dallison, in January of 2016. He called himself a boxer because of his domineering size, and according to Henriette, he was kind and affectionate. She fell for him instantly. After months of seeing each other, Henriette decided to leave the shelter she stayed at the time and moved in with Eunice, but only after trying to assure the charity staff that this was a good idea. She insisted that Eunice didn't have a toxic or possessive personality. So Henriette moved in with Eunice in his Canning Town apartment. And predictably, he began to show his true colours shortly after that. Henriette failed to turn up in court to testify in a case against Dallison. This was the ex-partner who had previously violated and maltreated her. This was a case that she had been eager to pursue, so she really should have been there. However, she wasn't there due to Eunice. To prevent the police from seeking her out, he forced her to leave a message saying she wasn't feeling well. At this time, alarm bells should have been ringing. The last reported sighting of Henriette was in East London in 2016. There, she was seen in the company of Eunice. This was when he received a penalty possession for illicit substances. Sadly, nobody came looking for Henriette after she disappeared. MJ came to know Eunice through her vices that often led her to criminals, and it was through one of them that she met Zahid. He lived near MJ at the time, and he was often seen in the local shops alongside her. MJ's family saw her for the last time in May of 2018 at her mother's home. When nobody could find her, she was reported missing by her family. The missing report inquiry that came about from their report left much to be desired. The Metropolitan Police classified MJ's case as medium risk. The police refused to offer up a reward for information. They didn't allow the family to announce her missing status on television or to appeal her case. Given what the police had gathered about MJ's past, they presumed that she had simply run away and would return when she was ready. So the Mustafa family had to investigate her disappearance on their own. They found MJ's old mobile, which they passed to the police, but frustratingly nothing came of it at that time. In July of 2018, the police officers in charge of watching Eunice showed up at his home to ask about MJ, but he denied having ever known her personally. Eunice claimed that she was a friend of a friend, and the police simply encouraged him to report any sightings of her that he may have. Up until 2019, the police kept close contact with Eunice. They often exchanged calls and text messages and swung by for routine visits, for interviews, and for updates on his life. Eunice didn't shy away from these either. He even contacted them 26 times to lodge complaints of his own. Perhaps that was why the discovery that followed next came as such a surprise. In late April of 2019, an elderly missionary woman placed a call to the Met Police about a potentially ill or dead person. They were supposed to meet over 3 days ago, but she'd been unable to reach him. Her friend, whom she was in truth supporting, claimed to be sick with Crohn's disease. In a message exchanged between them, Zahid Eunice had declared that he only had her and God. So perhaps he was a man ready to change. Throughout this relationship, the missionary had sent Zahid over £1,000. When the communication stopped, she tried visiting his apartment. She knocked on the door, but she heard nothing back. She even tried looking in through the windows. When there was no response at all, she made the decision to call the Metropolitan Police. Perhaps something terrible had happened to Eunice inside this apartment. The police quickly came knocking on his door, but still there was no sign of him anywhere. No response to calls, knocks, or shouting of his name. So they climbed in through the window. They entered into an apartment in disarray, somewhere that hadn't been properly cleaned in years. Once inside, they searched for any indication as to where Zahid may have gone. The officers kept an eye out for hospital letters, doctor's notes, and other things of that nature. At the very end of a small hallway, they spotted a utility closet that was blocked by several objects. After clearing the way, they opened the door. Standing in there was a large freezer closed with a lock. On a hunch, they decided to check what was inside. The freezer was surrounded by flies. This is the real police body cam footage of this discovery.
There's a freezer here that I want to get into. It's locked, but... yeah.
With some effort, they pried open the lock and came to a shocking sight. Sheets of plastic and air fresheners partially buried something that stuck out the edge of the freezer. Upon inspection, it was a human foot. In an instant, the flat was transformed into a crime scene. Police were now in a race to determine the person to whom it belonged. Investigators now swarmed Eunice's apartment. The hunt for more evidence to discover exactly what had happened here was on. Sarah Thurkel was one of the country's leading CSI instructors. She was in charge of identifying the body. With the help of her team, she gathered fingerprints and biological evidence like the dead flies. Dr. Carl Harrison, a forensic anthropologist, was brought in to identify the body in the freezer. While they allowed the body to defrost naturally, the investigators focused on establishing who else had been in the apartment aside from Eunice. They scoured every surface of the house for fingerprints and DNA evidence, and the police started canvassing the area. They wanted to understand the personality and the whereabouts of Eunice. Quickly, his neighbours painted a picture of a disagreeable man, someone with anger issues and a history of violence. A request was made for his records while the CSIs pieced together the identity of several women who had been in Eunice's flat. One of them was a pack of medication for somebody named Mirakan Mustafa, or MJ. Someone they now discovered had been missing for over 11 months. At this point, the authorities were several days into the investigation. The body was now defrosted enough to analyse. Examiners noted a few tattoos that matched those that MJ was noted to have. The body's features also seemed to match the hair and facial structure of MJ. After acquiring DNA evidence from her immediate family, the police were able to confirm that it was indeed MJ's body that was found in the freezer. Shortly after MJ's body was identified, the police began to seek out the women whose items were found in Eunice's apartment during the investigation. They were very forthcoming about Eunice and his history, allowing them to identify him as the most likely suspect. Fingerprint evidence also established that it was Eunice who dumped MJ's body in the freezer. At this juncture, the real hunt for Zahid Yunus began. They combed CCTV for a sighting of him, but they found nothing. Around the same time, news came of a second body in the freezer directly below MJ's. They quickly confirmed the body to be that of Henriette Suge. She was one of the only women linked to Eunice that the police had not been able to track down. There were bags of shredded paper detailing her feelings, her thoughts, emotions, and her drawings during the time she spent with Eunice. She mentioned him directly, talked about him maltreating her, and how he displayed the same patterns of control he had used time and time again. This was the behaviour that he was already known for, but behaviour that he was free to carry out again and again. Henriette's DNA was already in the system. This is because of the nature of the violation from the case she had with David Dallison. Zahid Yunus was tracked down and arrested not long after. The police waited for him at his brother's apartment and apprehended him with force. Although he was now in custody, the investigation was still far from over. The police discovered MJ's phone under Eunice's couch, and her mobile data revealed that they did, in fact, know each other, and they knew each other intimately. They also found Henriette's fingerprint in his cooker, and both of the women's bodies had injuries concurrent with Eunice's established patterns of violence. Henriette had suffered multiple head traumas, the likely cause of her demise. There were also 58 additional injuries. All of the ribs on the left side of her body were also broken. MJ had serious internal injuries, compression fractures to her sternum, and a number of her ribs were broken as well. Using the timeline of each woman's disappearance, the police were able to determine when they passed away. They estimated that Henriette must have been dead for around 2 years, and MJ for less than 1 year. MJ and Henriette were laid to rest by their respective families, with no small amount of resentment towards the Metropolitan Police, along with the justice system that allowed a monster like Eunice to thrive for so long, free to do what he wanted without being caught. The Mustafa family in particular were furious with law enforcement for the approach to MJ's disappearance. Perhaps if they'd been allowed to be more proactive, all of this could have been over much, much quicker. The trial of Zahid Yunus lasted 6 long weeks. It drew to a close on September the 3rd. Eunice strung together lie after lie each time evidence was presented. He claimed that he was blackmailed to store the bodies of both women in a freezer, blackmailed by an unnamed and unknown mysterious man. He also insisted he was a decent guy despite everything he'd done in the past. This should have been a provable enough lie for nobody in the court to have trusted a single word that he said. Zahid's chances of receiving a lenient sentence evaporated after all of the women he'd assaulted came forward to testify. This included the 14-year-old that he groomed, the college student that he assaulted, and several other women. Mrs. Justice Chima Grube presided over the court proceedings. As if the evidence and testimony were not damning enough, Eunice lost his cool when he was pressed for information. He called the judge arrogant, and he hurled slurs at one of the victims while she was taking the stand. Eunice was a coward and a bully until the very end. He refused to attend his own sentencing, a sentencing in which he received 38 years to life in prison.
It's just a shame, we're not going to see her grow up, get married, graduate, have a family, any of those things.
Kristen Denise Smart was born on February the 20th, 1977 in Augsburg, West Germany to Stan and Denise Smart. Denise worked as a teacher on an American Army base stationed in Germany. Kristen had one brother and one sister. Her parents relocated to Stockton, California when she was a young child. Kristen went on to graduate from Stockton's Lincoln High School in 1995. She also worked as a lifeguard and camp counselor in Hawaii. Kristen was a freshman at California Polytechnic State University, popularly known as Cal Poly, in San Luis Obispo in 1996. On May the 25th, 1996, just a couple of days before Memorial Day, Kristen attended a birthday party at an off-campus fraternity house. She did not know anyone there, but thought it would be a fun adventure. Although her friends did not attend the party, they dropped her off there. Little did they know this would be the final time that they would see Kristen. She left the party at around 2 a.m. Two other students who left the party, Cheryl Anderson and Tim Davies, discovered Kristen passed out in a neighbour's yard. They assumed that she was drunk or drugged. While they were assisting Kristen, another student from the party, Paul Flores, whom she had met earlier that night, volunteered to assist the group, and then all three of them would drop Kristen off at her dorm. On this journey back to Kristen's dorm, Tim Davis, who lived off campus and had driven to the party, was the first to leave the group. Next, Cheryl Anderson, who lived in another dorm, also left the group. Paul and Kristen were then left alone. Paul lived the closest to Kristen's dorm, so at the time, this made sense. Paul allegedly informed Kristen's friends that he took her back to the Muir residence, which was her dormitory. But Kristen was never heard from again. Kristen's roommate became concerned when she did not return home to her dorm on the morning of May the 25th. At this time, she alerted campus police. However, campus police did very little with this information. Campus police initially assumed she simply left on vacation without informing anybody. Most students tend to do this throughout the holidays, and because the long Memorial Day weekend was approaching, this explanation added up. Because of this, Kristen was not officially accepted as a missing person until May the 28th, despite her family regularly contacting the police and saying that she was missing. There was further evidence in the room that Kristen never returned. Her clothing, her belongings, her medicine and her identification were all still in the room where she always kept them. When authorities questioned Paul about Kristen's location, Paul stated that he did not walk her all the way back. Instead, they parted ways and he walked back to his own dorm. He said that he last saw Kristen on Grand Avenue shortly after Cheryl Anderson departed. Paul Flores was seen later in the day on May the 25th with a black eye, according to reports. He told the police that he was playing basketball when the ball hit him in the eye. But Paul arrived at the game with the bruise, according to his friends who were playing basketball with him. Paul later changed his story, claiming that he injured his eye whilst working on a truck at his father's house.
Because I didn't think it would matter.
How do we know that everything that you've told us so far isn't really the truth? How do we know now that you lied for us?
Well, that wasn't important though.
Sure it is. That's important.
He then also allegedly informed another acquaintance that he had no idea how he got the black eye, and that he simply woke up with it. Paul Flores dropped out of Cal Poly shortly after Kristin went missing. His grades were dropping, he was on the verge of failing university, and he had been caught drunk driving and driving without a license. Police searched Paul's dorm room with cadaver dogs, but no evidence was uncovered. There were banners and billboards everywhere in town, offering rewards for anyone with information about Kristin, as well as a link to the FBI website. Groups of volunteers scoured the area for any signs of where she may be. Others used ground-penetrating radar gear. Nobody knew if she was still alive or if she was buried in the ground. Even though Paul Flores was never actually convicted of the crime at this time, Kristin's family launched a $40 million wrongful death claim against him in 1997. In a November 1997 deposition,
on the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
We are going off record now at 11:20.
Paul refused to answer any questions and invoked the Fifth Amendment. After 6 years of no real developments in the case, Kristin was declared legally dead on May the 25th, 2002, the 6th anniversary of her disappearance. In 2003, Kristin Smart's case was linked to Lacey Peterson, who went missing on Christmas Eve in 2002. She was found deceased and Scott Peterson was found guilty of taking her life in 2003. Many people made the connection because when Kristin went missing, she was a freshman at Cal Poly, and Lacey and Scott Peterson were seniors. Scott Peterson, however, denied any involvement in Kristin's case, and he was subsequently cleared. In June 1996, shortly after Kristin went missing, an earring that many felt belonged to Kristin was found at a property owned by Paul Flores' mother. The people that found the earring were Joe and Mary Ann Lassiter. When they found it, it had a smeared fingerprint in what appeared to be dried blood. The couple gave the earring to 2 detectives from the sheriff's office. Mary Ann saw one detective hold up the earring and take a picture for evidence. However, the earring was never officially marked as evidence by authorities. The item was eventually lost.
And do you have any information as to where Kristin Smart's body is located?
Of course not.
Does your husband have any information as to where Kristin Smart's body is located?
No.
Does your son have any information as to where Kristin Smart's body is located?
Nope.
Has your son ever told you that he did not kill Kristin Smart?
We never asked that question. We just, do you know anything about it? He says no.
From 2011 to 2020, the Sheriff's Office and forensic specialists said they carried out 18 search warrants, that they submitted 37 items for DNA testing, recovered from 140 new pieces of evidence. They also conducted nearly 100 interviews. On September the 6th, 2016, the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office reported that they were investigating a fresh lead in the case. Cadaver dogs were brought in and searched the area for 4 days. They discovered objects on a hillside near Kristin's dorm. The items are being analysed to see whether they are connected to the case, which could take days, weeks, or months. No further information on the items was ever given. Chris Lambert, a singer-songwriter, launched a 10-part podcast series on the events of Kristin's disappearance on September 30th, 2019. He compiled information and described in detail what happened 23 years ago. The podcast became a huge success with over 12 million downloads. This meant that the public's interest in the case grew, putting pressure on authorities to continue their investigation. This new interest meant that in January of 2020, the billboard asking for information that had been up since 1997 was replaced with a new one. Paul Flores' 2 trucks were taken into evidence on January the 29th, 2020, according to the San Luis Obispo Police Department. On February the 5th, 2020, search warrants were issued for particular items of evidence at 4 distinct sites. 2 in San Luis Obispo, 1 in Washington State, and the other at Paul Flores' residence in Los Angeles County.
So I became sheriff in 2011 and requested a complete review of all the physical evidence that had ever been taken in the missing person case. In February of 2020, detectives served search warrants at the home of Paul Flores, as well as his sister, mother, and father.
On April 22nd, 2020, it was announced that the items discovered during the search of Paul Flores' residence had been successfully recovered. They discovered date rape drugs and home videos of Paul Flores. On these videos, he was performing unconsensual intimate acts on young women. It was discovered that more than a dozen allegations of sexual assault against Paul Flores dated back to the late 90s. In these allegations, 4 women said that Paul met them in a bar, drugged them, and then assaulted them.
Some of those women, who did not want their real names used, told Lambert about their encounters with him.
So I walk him up to his sister's apartment, and all of a sudden he just picked me up, carried me inside, turned around, he shut the apartment door, and locked it. So I said, you better turn some lights on right now and let me out, or I'm going to scream. So eventually he unlocked, the apartment door, and I left.
Lambert also interviewed a woman who dated Flores, until she says he became physically and verbally abusive.
And he had a butter knife and he held it to my neck, and I was screaming, and my roommate actually kicked down the door to make him stop.
On February the 11th, 2021, Paul Flores was arrested on suspicion of being a felon in possession of a firearm, which is a felony offence in California. Cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar were utilised in March 2021 to explore the ranch owned by Ruben Flores, Ruben being the father of Paul. On April 13th, 2021, Paul was once again arrested at his residence in Los Angeles, this time charged with murder. Father Ruben was also arrested and charged with an accessory the same day. Authorities believe that Paul took Kristin's life during an attempt to assault her, just like the attacks that he carried out on the 4 other women. Police also believe that Ruben assisted his son in concealing the body after she passed. Authorities believe that Kristin's body was buried at Ruben's ranch until recently, at which point the remains were relocated. When they dug up Ruben's house, they discovered a piece of disturbed soil beneath the deck, indicating a shallow grave. At that location, the cadaver dogs began to exhibit small behavioural changes. The dirt contained traces of blood, but DNA could not be extracted from it. They also discovered fibres of various colours in the earth. These colours matched the clothing that Kristin was last seen in. A man that rented a room at Ruben's house for 10 years alleged that when Ruben mentioned Kristin to him, he referred to her as a dirty slut. According to authorities, there was a leak in Ruben's kitchen in 2014, and he refused a plumber to go beneath the deck to repair it. The trial was postponed several times before being moved to Monterey County to be heard by Judge Jennifer O'Keefe. Over 1,500 jury members were summoned, and jury selection began on June the 13th, with the trial's opening arguments beginning on July the 18th. After hearing all evidence, Paul Flores was found guilty of first-degree murder on October the 18th, 2022.
And Paul Flores is looking at a possible life sentence. The San Luis Obispo sheriff said that a popular podcast about Kristin's disappearance was crucial in bringing worldwide attention to this case and key witnesses. David?
A podcast yet again. Mona co-star Abdi tonight. Mona, thank.
His father, Ruben, was found not guilty of accessory to murder.
Not relieved. There was a lot of made-up things, and a lot of stories there, and just too much made-up stuff. That's all I can say.
As for the family, the victim's family?
Yeah, I feel bad for them because they didn't get no answers about what happened to their daughter, and we don't know what happened to their daughter. So, and like I say, I feel sorry for them.
If Ruben had been convicted, he would have only served a maximum of 3 years in jail. Paul Flores now faces a sentence of 25 years to life in prison. California state legislators and Governor Pete Wilson signed the Kristen Smart Campus Security Act on August 19, 1998. The law, which went into effect on January 1, 1999, mandates all public colleges and universities to have their security services negotiate agreements with local police departments about reporting situations involving or possibly involving violence against students, including missing students. It is difficult to say whether this case has truly ended. Whilst the individual responsible will most likely spend the rest of his life in prison, Kristen's body has never been found and her parents have never been able to give her the proper funeral that she deserves. Do you think the punishment here fits the crime? Has justice been served? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure you hit like on this video to boost the signal of this case, which in my eyes is not yet over.
I feel like she's with someone against her will, or maybe worse.
Savannah Page Gold was a 21-year-old woman from Jacksonville, Florida. She had a heart of gold to match her name. She was a remarkable young woman who was known for her charm. She was kind and had a compassionate nature. She was born to Daniel and Sherry, joining brother Chris. Savannah had a special bond with her mother. They were not just mother and daughter, but also best friends. Sherry was sadly battling with cancer, so the doting daughter helped her to navigate the challenges of chemotherapy. This helped them to form a unique relationship built on love and support. Savannah truly was priceless to the family. She also worked hard at Bonefish Grill as a waitress. This was a job she had been in for around 2 years, and there she left a lasting impression on her co-workers and the customers that she served. All of this whilst making money to support the family. Her genuine and friendly personality made her a beloved figure in the restaurant. Her friends described her as someone who loved fiercely, gave generously, and someone that had a fantastic sense of humor. She was a perfectionist in her endeavors, and she always strived to give her best. It was evident that she approached life with passion and dedication. Savannah had dreams of attending the coincidentally named Savannah College of Art and Design. She even received scholarships for her talents in lacrosse and art. However, her decision not to pursue this path showed her deep-rooted commitment to her family, with her mother's health concerns leading Savannah to put her family's well-being above her own ambitions. Her presence in the lives of those around her made her a cherished daughter, sister, and friend. Jacksonville is a vibrant city in the northeastern area of Florida. It sits along the Atlantic coastline of the United States. As the largest city by land area in the US, it has a huge mix of both natural landscapes and urban attractions. On August 2nd, 2017, Savannah had begun her day like any other. She prepared to go to her shift at the Bonefish Grill. This was set to begin at 5:30 p.m. On her way to work, she spoke with one of her good friends. During the conversation, they happily talked about the next time that they would get together. Savannah had begged her friend to hang out with her over the previous days, but her friend had been sick with a cold that she jokingly said that Savannah had given to her. They continued to make future plans of spending time together, and then Savannah ended the conversation to begin her shift at the restaurant. 10 minutes later, Savannah's supervisor was expecting her to show up at any moment, ready to start work. It was a rather slow day inside the restaurant on a weekday, and she was scheduled to work after all. When Savannah never walked through the door, her supervisor grew slightly frustrated. However, they simply removed her hours from the schedule, and business continued as usual into the evening. 30 minutes after Savannah's failure to appear at work, her father received a text message coming from her phone number. The message detailed how Savannah had found a man that she had fallen in love with, and that this love was so intense that they were going to run away together. They were willing to leave both of their families and their homes behind. The message also said that Savannah would contact her parents, but only once she and her newfound love arrived at their final destination. destination. Moments later, Savannah's brother also received a text message from his sister, one that said that she couldn't take it anymore, saying that she had to leave town. Once the initial surprise of this news wore off, Savannah's parents took a second to read over the message more carefully. After noticing multiple grammatical and spelling errors throughout the messages, Savannah's mother quickly took note of the words that were used and the structure of the message. Since they texted quite frequently throughout each day, Savannah's mother almost immediately knew that something was wrong. Whoever was sending these messages was not her daughter. Savannah's parents swiftly called her number. They were hoping that they would hear her familiar voice on the other side of the line. However, when the call was sent straight to voicemail, the anxiety they were feeling only grew. After multiple attempts to reach her, they began to think of other ways that they could make sure that Savannah was safe. Knowing that she had a shift at the Bonefish Grill, they called the number of the restaurant in order to check on her. When the supervisor who answered the phone reported that Savannah had never turned up for work, the concern in their stomachs turned into a deep-rooted fear that something was gravely wrong. They wasted no time in contacting the police. The hunt for Savannah Gold was on. Since Savannah's last known location was somewhere between her home and the restaurant where she worked, the first place investigators visited was the Bonefish Grill. They walked inside and asked employees about Savannah, asking whether they had seen her, whether they knew where she was, or if they had any information to help their investigation. Meanwhile, other officers were in the parking lot. They were scouring for any sign that she might have been there at some point. To their surprise, they quickly found Savannah's car in the back of the parking lot. The doors were unlocked, and upon further inspection, all of her important belongings were inside. This included her ID and her purse. The driver's side tyre had been punctured. It sat flatly on the parking spot. This discovery led police to seriously question the validity of the messages that had been sent from Savannah's phone. They now firmly believed that Savannah had been kidnapped. With this information, officers obtained security camera footage from the restaurant. This footage provided a view of the parking lot, including Savannah's parking spot. The camera showed Savannah arriving to work in her car at 5:30 p.m. This was exactly when her shift was scheduled to begin. Savannah then got out of her car wearing her uniform. She then walked over to a silver sedan which was parked directly beside her. After talking with the occupant of the vehicle for 15 minutes through the driver's side window, Savannah walked around to the other side of the car and got into the passenger seat. As officers continued to watch the footage, they became increasingly concerned as the video showed the silver sedan beginning to shake. It showed the door opening and then forcefully being slammed back shut. Were they now witnessing Savannah's abduction? And then suddenly the vehicle was still. Investigators squinted their eyes as a driver emerged from the vehicle. They then walked over to Savannah's car and opened the driver's side door. The quality of the security video revealed no defining features. It only showed a man who was roughly 6 feet tall and had short brown hair. They continued to watch as a man reached his arm inside the car. He then took out Savannah's phone and then returned to his silver sedan. A moment later, the man walked back to Savannah's car a second time. There, he knelt down and punctured the driver's side tyre. At 6:04 p.m, the mysterious man in the silver sedan is shown leaving the parking lot, and as far as they could tell, Savannah was seemingly still inside the car. This footage was immediate confirmation that Savannah had been abducted, and now time was of the essence to locate her. According to this footage, Savannah hadn't been missing for long, so their hopes of finding her alive were still high. Investigators immediately got to work. They spent the following 2 days gaining every piece of evidence that they could. Evidence obtained from Savannah's family, friends, and her co-workers. By August the 4th, the Jacksonville police already had 3 potential suspects in Savannah Gold's disappearance. The next thing to do was cross-reference the suspects that they had gathered with the description of the silver sedan from the security footage. From running the names and dates of birth through the Department of Motor Vehicles database, they discovered that their first suspect didn't even have a license. There was no record of a vehicle being registered to him. Their second suspect was found to drive a red Jeep. He too was quickly passed over as the culprit in Savannah's kidnapping. Finally, upon a search with the information of their third suspect, they found that he owned a silver Chevy Malibu. This was an exact match to the vehicle seen in the parking lot of the Bonefish Grill. Lee Rodart Jr. had been the manager and chef at the Bonefish Grill for 5 years. When police had questioned him after Savannah's disappearance, he had explained to officers that they had been working together for a long while, but he said that they were not friends outside of that work arrangement. They were strictly co-workers, and Lee claimed he hadn't seen Savannah since her last shift at the restaurant. However, upon questioning other employees at the grill, officers quickly found out that Lee and Savannah had been having an on and off, romantically charged relationship for the past 8 months. There were 3 reasons why Lee wouldn't have told officers about his relationship with Savannah. Number 1, it was against company policy to have romantic relationships with co-workers. And number 2, Lee had a girlfriend at the time. Therefore, he was hiding crucial information to the investigation. And despite these logical reasons for withholding this information, police still listed Lee as a potential suspect. This proved to be useful as his vehicle matched the one that drove away just 2 days before with Savannah inside. In addition to this, police also noticed that when they first questioned Lee, he had a few cuts and scrapes on his neck and arms. This was only technically circumstantial, but it still raised alarm bells in the investigators' minds. On August 5, 2017, Lee Rodart was arrested by officers on a warrant for driving with a suspended license. This was the opportunity investigators needed to question Lee a second time about his associations with Savannah. Police began by asking Lee to explain a second time his relationship with her. It was at this point that Lee confessed to his first lie that he told to the police. He now admitted to officers that he and Savannah had formed a romantic connection, a connection that started soon after they began working together. He said they began spending time together outside of work, but they kept this relatively secret as Lee had a girlfriend at the time. Lee continued to explain that it wasn't long before Savannah began displaying problematic behavior that Lee didn't agree with. According to him, since he was in a relationship and they were moving so fast, he made the decision to start distancing himself from Savannah. He said he told her that they couldn't talk to each other anymore. As the questioning officer continued to question Lee, he asked a second time when the last time that he'd seen Savannah was. Lee then confessed to the second lie that he had told. He now admitted that he had talked to Savannah 3 days earlier on the day that she disappeared. According to him, he and Savannah had both arrived to work at the grill at the same time that day, and that they had even parked next to each other. When Lee had seen Savannah, he asked to talk to her for just a second. Lee detailed how the two discussed the fact that Savannah had been telling her co-workers about their previous fling. And remember, this fling was something that was against company policy, and Lee didn't want to get fired. It was at this point that Savannah got into the car, and an argument began. According to Lee's story, Savannah was angered by this confrontation. She apparently said that she was allowed to talk about whatever she wanted with her co-workers. After a period of raised voices and swearing, Lee told officers that Savannah got out of his car and walked out of the parking lot. He said there she was picked up by a green old Ford truck. Whilst Lee had chosen to be more truthful than he was the first time round, officers knew that he was still lying. After much preparation for this very moment, officers prepared to reveal the evidence they already had. With an eerie calmness, the questioning officer revealed to Lee that they knew his story was a complete fabrication. He was lying. They explained that they had seen the security footage of Lee leaving the parking lot in his car, a car that Savannah got into but never got out of. Lee continued for a long while to deny that he took Savannah anywhere, resting on his story that she had been picked up by a green truck. However, officers would not and could not accept this story, so they continued to press Lee for the truth. They made it abundantly clear that they knew what had really happened. And eventually, after a long and grueling interrogation, Lee Rodart finally gave in to the pressure that he faced from those questioning him.
You can do this. You can do the right thing.
She was hitting me. She wouldn't stop, and I squeezed back.
Okay.
And she was just...
Was she under your arm or something, or?
She started hitting me. After I slashed her tire.
Right.
And it went back and forth, and I squeezed her hard.
You squeezed her around her neck or around her neck with your hands?
She had
She had
her hands around mine.
Okay.
And then you had yours around hers, and y'all were just fighting back with each other.
Okay.
She just wouldn't let go, and I didn't let go.
Okay.
Stupid piece of
Everything that Lee had said prior to Savannah exiting the vehicle had been true. They had gotten into an argument about Savannah telling people about their romantic ventures. However, instead of getting out of the car, Lee explained that Savannah started to physically attack him. He continued to say that he had to defend himself against Savannah's strikes. This was until he eventually had to wrap his hands around her neck. He said he squeezed until he heard a popping noise. He says he looked down and realized that he had accidentally ended Savannah's life. And that all of this was just an attempt to protect himself. Lee continued to explain that after this occurred, he left the parking lot with Savannah in the car and drove back to his house. It was here where he placed Savannah's body in his fire pit and then set it alight. He said he burned over 75% of her body before removing it. He then wrapped it in sheets and put it back in his vehicle. He then drove to a lake in the woods of a dead-end street, and there he dumped her body into the water. Lee remained firm on the notion that he had accidentally ended the life of Savannah Gold, that this was indeed just a case of self-defense. Officers confirmed Lee's story with further security footage, video which showed evidence of his car at the lake on the day of Savannah's disappearance. Officers travelled to the lake and made every attempt possible to gather more evidence, and hopefully to recover Savannah's body. With the assistance of a dive team, Savannah's body was recovered from the water. An autopsy was promptly performed. However, this autopsy would prove essentially nothing. The burns to her body had concealed her cause of death. The only thing they did know was that Savannah had suffered a violent homicide at the hands of Lee Rodart. When Lee was charged with second-degree homicide, he pled not guilty due to the fact that he was acting in self-defense. He was subsequently remanded without bail until his trial. It took 2 years for Lee's case to go to trial in August of 2019. It took this long because multiple delays and postponements had taken place. When his court date finally arrived, Lee filed the Stand Your Ground petition, a law in Florida that protects those against prosecution if they were in fear for their life when they committed homicide or other severe bodily injuries. While this law in Florida more closely pertains to people who are the victims of home invasions, Lee's legal team still attempted to make it stick in this case. While the judge denied the petition and faced appeals, the trial continued to be put on hold. This meant that Savannah's family went for years without any relief from the pain that they were suffering. By February 2021, Lee and his legal team had finally realised that their appeals were getting them nowhere. Therefore, Lee changed his plea from not guilty by reason of self-defence to guilty of second-degree homicide. As part of Lee's plea deal, he would avoid the life sentence that he could have received if his case went to trial, and he would then instead receive 40 years in prison. From the years of delays in his case, the judge awarded Lee credit for the time he had served so far. This left 37 years to serve in prison, meaning that Lee could be released in 2058. Following the sentencing, Savannah's family spoke about the evil that Lee Rodart had committed against their daughter and sister. With Lee's back turned, he wiped away tears as Savannah's family remembered the positive light that she was in their lives, stating how Lee had taken it away so mercilessly. Savannah's father spoke about the immense, endless love that he had for his daughter, stating that the only way they could continue to go on without her is through knowing that she wouldn't want her passing to ruin their lives. And as for Savannah's mother, she struggled as her cancer had returned twice over the course of Lee's arrest, spanning over his conviction and the rest of the legal proceedings. Because of this pain and suffering on an extreme level, the judge ordered Savannah's mother to be awarded $9,000 in restitution, and then an additional $12,000 to be awarded to a victim trust fund. Following the hearing, Savannah's brother reflected on his experience throughout the past 3 years. He stated that he was grateful to the professionals who so swiftly investigated and then gained justice for his sister. In addition to the restitution and the victim trust fund, the public raised an additional $6,000 in order to help the Gold family pay for Savannah's funeral expenses. This was done through a GoFundMe campaign. The Gold family will always remember Savannah as a kind-spirited, giving and artistic soul, someone who radiated kindness to everyone around her. Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Has love ever driven you to do something a little crazy? Maybe to do things that you normally wouldn't do. Say things that just aren't quite the real you. I think all of us can admit we're guilty of love changing us sometimes in some ways. We're all human. But where is the line between being crazy in love and just pure crazy, obsessed, or dangerously jealous? The case of Kendra Hatcher explores just how deep and dark those feelings can become. Kendra Hatcher was born and raised in Pleasant Plains, Illinois, and attended dental school there before relocating to Dallas for employment. She had just signed a contract to work at Smile Zone, a dental surgery. The job appeared to fit her well. Kendra was a devout Christian who wanted to use her training as a dentist to serve the community. Children from underprivileged households could receive top-notch dental care at Smile Zone. In my opinion, a very worthwhile career move. Kendra spent her free time volunteering and provided free dental care for children in Ecuador. She also taught Bible study. Both Kendra's personal and professional life were thriving. Her career was on the rise. A relationship blossomed between Kendra and Dr. Ricardo "Ricky" Paniagua. Even though they had only been dating for a few months, and Ricky was finishing his dermatology residency at the University of Texas, they had already talked about getting married. The couple had their first date on May the 24th after meeting on Tinder. Ever since then, they were inseparable. They shared the same ideals and aspirations in life. Kendra Hatcher, now 35, on Wednesday, September 7th, 2015, arrived home as she pulled into the Gables Park 17 parking lot. Gables Park 17 was a colourful and opulent apartment building with a saltwater infinity pool, a fitness studio, and a gourmet coffee bar in uptown Dallas, Texas, in the United States. She felt safe living there because there was a 24-hour concierge service, there was CCTV and security. She arrived at 7:42 p.m, excited for the weekend ahead in which she had plans to go to Mexico with Ricky for Labor Day. Two males that were walking through the parking lot heard shouts and then heard a loud popping bang noise. Just a short while after, Kendra pulled into her parking space. A Jeep Cherokee was seen accelerating out of the garage after these loud noises were heard. A resident of the apartment building, Hashem Saad, heard screaming and dialed 911. Police quickly arrived to the luxury apartments. There they found Kendra, still in her car. She had already, sadly, passed. The loud popping bang noise apparently came from a firearm. Because Kendra's purse had been taken, it was initially assumed that a robbery had occurred. A pistol magazine and bullet fragments were discovered on the ground next to her body. Police concluded, however, that the nature of the shot did not suggest that it was a robbery. As they looked further into the situation and assessed the evidence that was present, it all pointed towards an execution. When the shot was discharged, Kendra's hands were up and behind her head according to the gunshot residue discovered. Her upper skull provided the entry point for the projectile, and it exited through her chin. But who would do this to Kendra? She was reportedly liked by everybody. She was charitable, she was professional, she was kind and loving. She was known to help anyone in any way that she could. The apartment complex security footage was obtained by the police. A Jeep Grand Cherokee was seen in the video entering the parking garage at 7:15 p.m. At 7:42 p.m, the video showed Kendra driving into the same garage after returning home. A man was then seen on the footage approaching Kendra's car, and then shortly afterwards he was seen on the footage heading back towards the Jeep. According to the police, this was their main suspect.
Investigators are hoping the images of this older model Jeep Cherokee with damaged or faded paint on the hood with paper license plates may jog someone's memory. The rims are distinctive, and it's hard to tell whether the driver is a man or woman.
Anything more solid than just this picture of the Jeep right now?
At this point, no, but I can tell you I spoke with the medical examiner's office late this afternoon, and I am told that Dr. Hatcher did die of a single gunshot wound to the head and neck. Close friends come to cry, pray, and remember 35-year-old dentist Dr. Kendra Hatcher. She was shot and killed Wednesday evening in the garage of her uptown Dallas luxury apartment.
The security footage showed that there was a second person present. It was a woman in the driving seat of the Jeep. The woman accelerated out of the garage as soon as a man climbed back inside the car. However, it wasn't clear enough for authorities to be able to identify them, so they turned to the public for assistance and shared photos of the Jeep and its driver with the media. A man named Jose Luis Ortiz called the police and admitted that the Jeep belonged to him, but he said he wasn't involved in the attack, nor was he driving the car. According to him, Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortez, two of his acquaintances, asked him if they might use his Jeep on the morning of September the 2nd. They informed him that Crystal's normal vehicle was having mechanical problems, and they left it with Jose so he could fix it. He reportedly allowed them to use his Jeep whilst he was working on Crystal's car. Brenda invited Jose to meet at a Chili's restaurant that evening, and he accepted. They were scheduled to return the Jeep to him that evening after work, but both Crystal and his Jeep never turned up. Jose said to the police that Brenda was with him at the restaurant at the time of the attack. Later that evening, the Jeep was eventually returned back to Jose's house. As far as police could tell, Jose wasn't expecting his Jeep to be used as a getaway vehicle. He said that he only became aware of it after seeing the police's appeal and recognizing his own car. Brenda was questioned by Jose. She responded to his inquiries by denying that it was her in the Jeep. But she subsequently added that Crystal had used it to drive to Kendra's apartment complex to buy drugs, and that whilst there, something had likely gone wrong. Brenda advised Jose not to say anything. She said because it was his Jeep, he may get in problems with the police and endanger his citizenship. This is according to Jose's account to the police. He sensed that Brenda was just attempting to control him. Brenda allegedly proposed that Jose paint the Jeep a new colour and she would cover the cost. Jose, now incredibly suspicious and concerned, reported the incident to the police. Police contacted Brenda Delgado and inquired about Kendra. Brenda admitted to the police that she had never seen Kendra and that she had no idea who she was. When the police asked Brenda where she was at 7:42 p.m. on September the 2nd, she said that she was with Jose at a Chili's restaurant and produced dinner receipts. She was questioned by police regarding Jose's Jeep. Brenda claimed that she was innocent and she simply handed the Jeep's keys to Crystal. The police then set their sights on Crystal. Crystal Cortez was a single mother and was 23 years old. They questioned her about whether or not she was the woman seen driving the Jeep in the video. She first told authorities that on that night, an armed carjacker forced her to drive to the parking garage in the Jeep. She informed the police that she was there with her 9-year-old child, suggesting that doing what the carjacker said would protect both her and her offspring. However, the video proved that there was no child in the Jeep. This was her first provable lie. Crystal then revised her story. She now claimed to have driven the man to the garage voluntarily and that there had not been a carjacking. But she also said that she believed it was only going to be a robbery. She strangely stated that she had no knowledge of the shooting, which would be strange as she was at the location at the time that it happened. Even though she now said that she did believe it was for a robbery, the police asked why she consented to drive there in the first place, and she responded that it was because Brenda had requested her to. She then informed the police that Kendra was dating Brenda's ex-boyfriend, and that this must be the reason why Brenda targeted Kendra. From 2012 through to the start of 2015, Brenda and Ricky had a sporadic relationship according to the police. In February 2013, Ricky ended the relationship with Brenda for good and started dating other women. Ricky knew that it was serious when he met Kendra in May, so out of politeness he sent Brenda an email to let her know that he was now in a committed relationship. Brenda wasn't happy when Ricky started dating Kendra, but Ricky was unaware of just how scorned Brenda was. She appeared fine and expressed her wishes that they could continue to be friends. Ricky, though, must have had some level of suspicion about Brenda. He purposefully never told Brenda Kendra's name. Crystal, now realising that she could be in real trouble, sought to negotiate a plea agreement and decided to testify in exchange for a lighter punishment. As the questioning went on and the evidence against her grew, she told the police that Brenda had planned the murder and wanted Kendra permanently out of the picture. Crystal claims that after meeting Brenda, she started preparing for Kendra's slaying just 2 weeks later. So how did things escalate so quickly? When Brenda's relationship with Ricky ended, the police found that she wasn't simply sad about it. She was also fascinated and obsessed with Ricky. She was utterly determined to get him back, no matter what the cost. Despite the fact that her life had begun to fall apart around her, she feigned to Ricky that she was content with just being friends, but she started skipping work and her grades began to fall. She instead started working on getting Ricky back as if it was her full-time job. Brenda hacked Ricky's email account and cyberstalked both him and Kendra, learning about their travel arrangements and planned activities. She started to dislike Kendra. She thought that Kendra had replaced her, stolen a life that should have been hers. Crystal claims that Brenda said that she wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher. Crystal agreed to assist Brenda when she asked if she knew anyone up to the grim task of eliminating Kendra. They immediately began devising a scheme. They got together frequently and came up with a variety of plans. Initially, they intended to pull the trigger on Kendra after injecting her with a sedative. Brenda questioned Crystal, who was living in a poorer area, about whether she could find someone to carry out the execution. They drove around and approached various individuals to see if they might assist. Later, they encountered Christopher Love, a man that was willing to help. He agreed to assist and they spoke about several strategies for taking Kendra out. They all agreed that a simple firearm would be the most effective method of execution because it would be quick. According to Crystal, Brenda agreed to give her $500 in exchange for her part in the execution, and Christopher Love was to be given a mixture of money and narcotics. A plan was devised to end Kendra on September the 2nd because they knew she and Ricky had plans for the Labor Day weekend. They knew that the couple would be leaving Dallas on September the 3rd to take a vacation in Mexico. Brenda knew that they had plans to then go to San Francisco when they returned back, so she knew they had to do it before then. Since Brenda had put Ricky's iPhone account onto another phone and used that to track and stalk him, she was fully aware of all their plans and activities. Brenda stated to Crystal that she wanted the hit to seem like a botched robbery. Brenda and Crystal made a decision to follow Kendra to observe her day-to-day activities. By doing this, they believed they would be able to pinpoint the perfect location for the attack. They tailed her car to work. Brenda and Crystal sat outside a Salvation Army and watched her through binoculars. They then followed her home from work and figured out how to get into the parking garage. They discovered that if they parked in a visitor's space first and then followed another car into the garage, that there would be no trouble in getting inside. To be sure that these routines were regular and nothing changed, they repeated their routine of stalking for a few days. Brenda, Crystal and Christopher completed one final run through the day before on September the 1st and timed it. The attack was then due to be carried out by Crystal and Christopher alone the following day on September the 2nd. Brenda and Crystal met Jose early that morning to pick up the Jeep. They then went to a Jack in the Box restaurant to pick up Christopher. Brenda was then dropped off at a Carrollton library, and Crystal and Christopher travelled on by themselves to Kendra's apartment building. When they arrived, they waited for roughly 30 minutes across the street before instead driving to Kendra's place of employment. Quite disturbingly, Crystal then briefly left to do the school run. She then returned once more to Kendra's workplace. Kendra then finished work and left, trailed by the Jeep. Crystal and Christopher lost Kendra in the traffic, so they made the decision to head straight back to Kendra's apartment building. They arrived first and entered the garage just as planned. Kendra returned and pulled into her parking space. Christopher then exited the vehicle. He then walked over to Kendra's car and pulled the trigger. Kendra was now permanently out of the picture for Brenda. Crystal now claimed that although she heard the shooting, she didn't actually see it. Crystal and Christopher then left the parking garage. She then dropped Christopher off at home. Crystal then picked up her son before meeting Brenda at Jose's house to return his Jeep. The case then went to trial. Crystal Cortez agreed to be the prosecution's key witness as part of the agreement that she made.
We would follow her from her job to her house. We pretty much just found out her daily routine.
Both Christopher and Crystal were accused of murder, and their trials were held separately. Crystal received a 35-year prison term in exchange for her testimony and guilty plea to a murder charge. When Christopher's car was searched, a firearm was discovered in a side compartment by the vehicle. Forensics matched his firearm to Kendra's attack. By the time the trial took place, Christopher was ready to talk. He admitted to being hired by Brenda. Hired to carry out the attack on Kendra. He also stated that Brenda promised to pay him in cash and narcotics.
What's even more incredible is that investigators had phone calls recorded from the jail. They are of conversations between Love and his girlfriend. She asked him, "Why didn't you get rid of the gun if you used it to kill Dr. Hatcher?" He replies, "I know, it was stupid as," and then he uses an expletive. Love told detectives that even though he was at the scene, it was Crystal Cortez who pulled the trigger. Also, detectives say that the video refutes that. His lawyers are trying to paint him, though, as the patsy who will probably get the death penalty if he is convicted, while Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortez, who are the alleged masterminds behind all of this, will not face the same punishment.
When I heard that this had happened to her, and no, I'm getting off topic, but I couldn't imagine who would do it. I couldn't imagine who would hurt her because nobody disliked her.
Christopher was found guilty and was sentenced to death.
It's been devastating. Nobody can get any sleep. Nobody can eat. We've all been trying to be brave for each other, and it's hard. I do feel sorry about the death of the dentist, and I do feel sorry about her family and that they have to go through something like this. And I don't think that any mother should see her child die.
Brenda attempted to evade her fate. She spent nearly 7 months in hiding before going to trial. She was even included on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. She was arrested in Mexico in April 2016. Only on the condition that she would not be sentenced to death, Mexican authorities agreed to extradite her. She was charged with murder after being returned to the United States. At first, Brenda's family and Ricky didn't think that she could be involved. They knew her as a wholesome, loving woman with strong Christian and family values. When he stopped their relationship, according to Ricky, they remained good friends. He even texted her the night that Kendra was shot to let her know what had happened. Brenda pledged to assist him however she could. Brenda entered a not guilty plea, and her defense claimed that she had an alibi and receipts to show that she was at Chili's restaurant when Kendra passed. Her defense said that Brenda wasn't present when Kendra was wounded. However, the prosecution's claim was that Kendra was murdered as part of a murder-for-hire plot run by Brenda. The court was informed by prosecution that Brenda wanted Kendra out of the picture for a reason. She perceived her as a barrier to achieving her goals of reuniting with Ricky once more. And that simply couldn't happen if Kendra was still around. Brenda's cousin testified in court that Brenda suffered from depression as a result of her breakup from Ricky. He claimed that Brenda offered to pay him if he used a baseball bat to attack Kendra. He didn't accept the offer. A friend of Brenda's, Jennifer, testified that Brenda was upset with Ricky for ending their relationship and that she was very fascinated with him. She said before the court that Brenda read all of his emails and followed his whereabouts on his phone. She revealed to the jury that Brenda had access to his financial accounts and even had a copy of his house key. Brenda asked many people to eliminate Kendra. Prosecution claimed that she had taken advantage of Crystal. Crystal, a struggling single mother earning $11 an hour, aspired to be like Brenda, a woman with her own apartment, education and money. Brenda was someone that Crystal looked up to. According to testimony given in court, she gave Crystal $500, and the police also discovered a receipt to back this up.
Are you guilty of the capital murder of Kendra Hatcher?
Yes, I am.
Is Christopher Love guilty of the murder of Kendra Hatcher?
Yes, he is.
Is Brenda Delgado guilty of the murder of Kendra Hatcher?
Yes, she is.
Those 9 seconds from Crystal Cortez this afternoon sums up nearly 4 years of work for prosecutors to try and show Brenda Delgado as the mastermind in the murder of Kendra Hatcher. Cortez, appearing today in prison scrubs, is already serving a 35-year prison sentence for murder.
The court was informed that Brenda and Crystal spoke to one another 89 times over a 2-week period, from the 22nd of August to the 4th of September, and that cell phone data also connected her to Christopher prior to the murder. After only 30 minutes of deliberation, the jury found Brenda guilty.
You, Brenda Delgado, have earned your spot on this earth behind cold steel bars for the rest of your miserable, pathetic life. And if justice could have handed you a death sentence, make no mistake, I would have been there front and center.
She received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Do you believe justice was served here? What do you think of the sentences given? Let me know in the comments.
One thing I want to talk to you guys about was if she did jump off the bridge, what are the odds that she's not somewhere all the way out in the ocean by now?
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Something we speak about often on this channel is betrayal. This case is another example of a betrayal of the worst kind. Childhood friends, prom dates, some of the most trusted people in a young woman's life, turning on her mindlessly, ruthlessly, for purely selfish reasons. This is the truly tragic case of Sarah Stern. Sarah Stern was born on the 24th of March 1997 in Neptune City, New Jersey, USA. Her parents, Carla and Michael, encouraged her to be creative and active growing up. Mother Carla owned a bookstore and was a member of the American Booksellers Association. She had a real entrepreneurial spirit. Father Michael worked in quality control and project management. Sarah grew to have an artistic flair. She based much of her work around various fandoms, sharing her work on Twitter, and even giving it to the stars of her favourite shows and podcasts in person. The family enjoyed vacations together and were big fans of visiting Disney World. However, sadly in 2013, Carla passed away after a battle with cancer. Not the easiest start in life. But Sarah kept a positive attitude and threw herself into her passions. Now December the 3rd, 2016, Sarah was 19 years old.
Not emergency, actually on the Belmar Bridge, right after heading south in the middle of the bridge, there's a car that's abandoned.
An Uber driver was travelling along Belmar's Shark River at around 2:45 AM when he spotted a car abandoned on the road. The driver had a gut feeling about this relatively normal sight. It was parked at the top of the Route 35 bridge that connected Belmar with Avon by the Sea, New Jersey. He realised something wasn't right and called the police. The 1994 silver Oldsmobile 88 with 4 doors was parked in an unusual fashion. The car's keys were still in the ignition when police arrived, but there was no trace of anyone inside or close to the vehicle. The car was in good condition. It both started and ran smoothly. Police believed there could be 2 main reasons why the car would be there. Firstly, it could be stolen and dumped, or secondly, and more concerning, the driver could be in crisis. When they tracked the vehicle back to 96-year-old Lillian Stern, they learned that her 19-year-old granddaughter, Sarah Stern, frequently used it. Given that Sarah's car was parked on a bridge with a view of the Shark River, police needed to find out where she was immediately. Had she fallen or jumped into the water? Was she in trouble or had she already drowned? Time was working against them. Michael, Sarah's father, admitted to the police that he had been attempting to reach Sarah all night. He had sent her many text messages, but got no response. He was unaware of where she was or what she was doing. Unfortunately, at the time, he was over 1,000 miles away on vacation in Florida. Police needed to quickly build a profile of who Sarah was and what state of mind she was in that day. Liam McAtasney had known Sarah for around 13 years. They met at just 6 years old at Sunday school and had been good friends ever since. At around 4 AM, Liam was visited at home by the police.
You Liam? You got a second? Can I come in and talk to you real quick?
Yeah, no problem, officer.
Is Sarah here by chance?
No.
When was the last time you talked to her?
I was with her today.
What time?
Before I went to work.
So it was earlier today?
Yeah.
When was the last time you had any kind of contact at all with her? Turn some light on if you don't mind.
I mean, we went to get food today.
And you went to work at what time?
4:30.
Okay, so you haven't talked to her since 4:30? Do you have a cell phone you can reach out to her on?
I actually haven't been able to find my cell phone.
Any idea where
I've
it's
been
at?
calling it all day.
What was her mindset last time you talked to her?
I just know she's been trying to get away. She's been telling me she's going to Canada.
Trying to get away, okay. Canada, she's been real depressed lately?
Her dad is crazy.
Okay, and then she's dealing with the loss of her mother. Her dad's in Florida right now, right?
Her dad, yeah. He's coming back today, I guess. I don't know what time it is.
Where's the grandma?
Grandma's actually sick.
Where's your grandma at right now? She's not at the house.
She's staying with some family member.
Okay.
Grandma's coming home right now. She's at Sharon's.
Are they going to be able to get into the house? Because I know that there
we can get into the
there
house.
isn't a key.
We can get into the house.
Okay.
The house was open earlier. We were already in the house, and I have a key to the house. So.
Okay.
All right. Keep looking for your phone to see if there's any messages or anything. All right.
Thank you.
And all these things sitting around here.
Let us know. All right, call us up.
Yeah,
let us
sorry
know
about
what
all
time.
this.
Yeah, that's questionable behavior, man.
If you can maybe reach out to some friends, maybe hit our message on social media.
I definitely will.
Start reaching out to somebody, see if anybody's talked to her, or When they talked to her, what her mindset was.
He claimed that Sarah had recently become quite depressed. He painted a picture of a young woman at the end of her tether, someone seeking a new life and a way out. He said that she was packing up her belongings to leave and relocate to Canada. Canada, and Toronto in particular, is somewhere that Sarah had previously visited. She had tweeted about her excitement surrounding the country several times. Liam also claimed that Sarah's father, Michael, was unstable. Police discovered that Sarah was an only child, and that her mother sadly passed away in 2013. Liam used this information to build a picture of Sarah, saying she was likely to attempt to take her own life. This raised concerns because the location of the car suggested that she may have jumped off the bridge into Shark River. If she had done this, she would almost certainly have been carried downriver into the Atlantic Ocean. Police searched Shark River and the surrounding land, but no evidence of her whereabouts was discovered. There was a breakthrough with the discovery of a CCTV camera located under the Route 35 bridge. This could have revealed if Sarah did indeed end up in the water. But frustratingly, and typically in these type of cases, it had not been functional in quite some time. Liam was now interviewed by the police once more. They sought to determine Sarah's exact mental state, and whether this was likely a case of her taking her own life.
What's going on? Just give me what's going on with her. Like, how's she been acting lately? The same? Different?
No.
Liam, you've known her since first grade, you said.
Yeah.
Has she been different than normal lately?
Well,
and for how long?
In the past, she has had a tendency to have self-destructive behavior. Over the past few months, she's been telling me, how bad her relationship with her father is, and how she just needs to get out of here.
Why was it bad? What made it bad?
Fighting.
Arguing, fighting?
Arguing, fighting. I've been friends with her since first grade, so we have a pretty good friendship.
Liam was not just a close friend of 13 years. Police also thought that he was one of the last people to see her after they met for lunch on December the 2nd. They went to Taco Bell together that day, ate, and then returned to her place. Sarah was last seen by Liam when he left for work that afternoon, according to him. A surveillance camera owned by Sarah Stern's neighbour captured Liam leaving the home in the late afternoon. This indeed matched what Liam told the police. In order to get to work, he said he left her home in the afternoon. The camera captured Sarah's car backing out of the driveway later that evening at 11:45 p.m. However, unfortunately, the police were not able to see the car's driver. When the car was spotted again on the bridge by the Uber driver, Sarah had vanished.
What's the extent of your relationship? I would say we're pretty close friends. More over the summer than during the winter, but we've still been pretty close. She actually, I'm a lifeguard in Bradley Beach. She was a bad chick, so I saw her pretty much every day over the summer. We're just childhood friends. We can talk about whatever.
Do you know her family?
Yeah, I know some of her family.
You know her dad?
Mm-hmm.
What's her relationship like with her dad?
Not good.
When you say not good, what do you mean?
I can't say that anything's ever gotten violent, but I know that there's a lot of fighting all the time. It's just constant fighting between her and her father.
You haven't told us about the bank.
Yeah.
How come you haven't told us about the bank?
Well, I told him about the bank, but...
Did you go to the bank?
I was with her.
Okay.
It's the way back from Taco Bell.
What did you do at the bank?
No idea, I didn't go in.
You stayed in the car?
Yeah.
What did she tell you she was stopping at the bank for?
Something to do for money. I don't know. She had found money in Avalon House a few months ago. And, she has a lockbox full of money in there.
A lockbox full of money where?
In Carney Bank.
How do you know?
She's told me.
Whose money did she find?
She said that it must have belonged to her mother. What she thought was her mom left it for her, hid it in the house, so if her dad were to take her money, she would still have money left for her by her mom. That's
how much money?
I couldn't tell you. She said it could be She told me a range. She said it could be from 20 grand to 100 grand. She wasn't sure.
She wasn't sure how much money she found?
Yeah.
How does that make sense to you? That you wouldn't be sure how much money you found?
Well, she told me the condition of the money was pretty bad. Like it was all stuck together. Well, it was all old bills.
Did she give you any of the money?
No. I do know that Robert Santamon is another person that knows about the money besides me, though. Because she had told me that he needed to get something done with his car, and he was asking her for money. But that's the only person I know that would have an idea of how much money it would be.
Some thought that Sarah drove to Shark River, shit herself and fell into the water. Others who knew Sarah better didn't think she would have harmed herself in this way, or that she would have just upped and left for Canada or elsewhere. Most people that knew her wouldn't describe her as melancholy or depressed. They thought of her as happy-go-lucky and full of life. Furthermore, they were aware that she would have brought her cherished dog, Buddy, with her everywhere she went. There's no way that she would have left him home alone with no plans in place to care for him. However, when they searched Sarah's home, Buddy was discovered locked up in his cage. He had no food or water. This surely isn't something Sarah would have allowed to happen. Buddy and Sarah were the best of friends. Despite extensive searches by the police and local residents, Sarah wasn't found, nor was any evidence discovered to point towards if she had ended up in the water. The search for Sarah was eventually abandoned. It was starting to seem as though Sarah's disappearance would never be solved. When Anthony Curry, an amateur filmmaker, got in touch with the police in January 2017, everything they thought they knew about Sarah's disappearance changed in an instant. Though he wasn't certain, he thought he may have known what happened to Sarah. He felt compelled to inform the police about a story that Liam had told him because it was stuck in his mind. It just didn't sit right with him. On Thanksgiving night, around a week before Sarah vanished, Liam revealed a fantasy to Anthony. In this twisted fantasy, he would take the life of a female. He wanted to throttle them and then throw them from a bridge. He informed Anthony that it was merely just a plot for a movie, something he was working on. But Anthony later feared the worst when he learned that Sarah was missing. The parallels were startling. Anthony helped the police with their investigation, and on January the 31st, 2017, he consented to record Liam via a hidden camera. It wasn't difficult to obtain a confession. Liam was disturbingly eager to speak with Anthony. He couldn't wait to explain what had occurred to Sarah in great detail. He spoke about how she passed, how she repeatedly called his name, begging him to stop. Here is that recording.
I pretty much hung her, like, I picked her up and had her just, like, dangling off the ground, and she just herself, and you lose control of said my name, and then that was it. And it took me a half an hour to kill her. I thought I was going to be able to choke her out and have her out in, like, a couple minutes. I choked her out, and then she was just laying there having a seizure or something. So then I got a shirt and I just shoved it down her throat so she wouldn't throw up or anything, and held my finger over her nose and set a timer. That's the only time I had my phone. And it took me like a half an hour after I hit start on the timer.
He revealed to Anthony that he dumped Sarah's body off the bridge with the aid of an acquaintance, Preston Taylor. Preston Taylor was Sarah Stern's prom date just the year before, although they didn't date or have an intimate relationship. Police detained Preston and Liam the next day.
So, how long have you known Liam for?
Sam was shortly after meeting me. Liam was in my algebra class freshman year, so I've known him since then.
I see.
We're nice, pretty good friends. Hanging out ever since.
Just beginning in high school?
Yeah.
Did you go to school with Sarah as well?
Yeah, they were all in the same friend group. That was essentially who I started hanging out with when I went to high school.
Okay. Now, is she your year or is she older or younger than you?
She's the same age.
Same age. You guys graduated together? And how did you meet Sarah? through Liam and James. They're friends with like a whole bunch of Nixon City kids. And that's where I started hanging out.
And did you socialize with Sarah? Did you talk to her on a regular basis, or?
Not on a regular basis. When we hung out, like when everyone all got together and talked to her, that was really it.
Did you talk to her on the phone? Do you have her phone number? Like, do you have that type of relationship with her where, like, you call her up?
But good. We didn't really speak too much.
Sarah had been close friends with both Liam and Preston. To many, it was unthinkable that they would have been involved in her disappearance in any way. The two beachfront communities of Belmar and Avon-by-the-Sea were thrown into disbelief. As stated earlier, Preston had only taken Sarah to the prom the year before, but according to Liam's taped confession, the motive in this crime was not sexual for either man. The main driving force behind this vile attack was simply money. Liam had been preparing an attack on Sarah for 6 months. Sarah possessed, in Liam's estimation, about $100,000. Whilst Liam was devising a scheme to rob her, Sarah believed that she was spending time with a good friend, confiding in him, and making plans. She had known him since first grade after all. The trust was deep set. He was aware that she had received some money after her mother passed away, but Sarah's finances were in no way comparable to his 6-figure delusions.
The worst part of it is I thought I was walking out 50 grand, 100 grand in my pocket. She had one safe and she took money out and she only had 10 grand. And this money, I don't know if it was Bert or something. It's f***ing old money, terrible quality. I don't even know if I can put any of it in the f***ing bank.
In reality, there was less than $10,000 involved. That was the price of Sarah's life.
It's your life, you might as well make it one. What, are you gonna live some boring life?
Given that they still lacked the vital evidence of Sarah's body, police realised that they would need more than a taped confession to build a strong case for the prosecution. Luckily, they got just what they needed. Preston admitted to his role in the crime and told the police everything. He even walked the police through the house where the attack happened.
When I entered...
When you entered, were the lights on in the house or were they off?
The lights back here were off, but the kitchen and the living room lights were on.
Okay.
And this door was closed. This one I couldn't get open, but I was able to push this one open, enter, and Sarah was slumped in this corner right here.
Okay. And again,
behind this door.
Preston, you said, no, there's these two bifold doors here. The door to the left was in what position?
It was closed.
Okay. And did you try to open it?
I tried to, was only able to get it about that far, and realized that she was behind the door.
Okay. And how about the right door? Were you able to open that fully?
Yes.
Okay. And how was Sarah's body positioned in this bathroom?
She was sitting like this, tucked into the corner and leaning over the toilet.
Okay. And her feet were where?
Sticking out into the room.
Okay. Position when you were taking her out?
She was been facing away, and I had my arms under her shoulders like this.
Okay. So were her feet dragging on the ground?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I carried her over here. And dragged her over here and kind of sat her under the bushes right here.
These are the bushes that you placed Sarah in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
yes.
how did you position her when you brought her out here?
She was just laying on her side like this.
Okay. Which direction was her face?
Facing outward.
Okay.
And with her feet down here and her head up here.
Okay. So her head was up here, and her face was facing Detective Catalona?
Yeah.
Okay. And what type of position was she in? Was she laying on her side? Was she laying flat? Was she laying on her stomach with her head turned?
She was laying on her left side. Two of us hopped the fence right here again, and we made our way up to the house. Right under these bushes here, we pulled her out, and he picked her up to start dragging her. I grabbed her legs and got her over to the fence. Okay. Liam dragged her over to the car and sat her in the passenger seat while I was putting the safe in my car.
Okay. And did you see him dragging her?
Yeah.
If somebody were driving down the road and looking into that car, what would they see?
They would have seen Liam driving a car and Sarah, assuming that she was asleep in the passenger seat.
Okay, and you traveled to which bridge?
The 35 bridge to Belmar going southbound.
You were saying Liam had her...
Liam had her by the shoulders and hoisted her up onto the railing, and then I pushed her feet over so that she was going over the rest of the way. As she went over, immediately after, her body was up and over the rail. As we were running back to my car, the black Mercury Mystique, we heard a loud metallic bang, and that was all.
Okay. Did you have any conversation with Liam about that noise that you heard?
No.
Liam now remained silent and would not respond to any of the police's questions. Perhaps he realised that bragging about what he had done wasn't working in his favour. Preston, however, admitted to dumping Sarah's body over the Route 35 bridge. He admitted to robbery, planning the robbery, tampering with physical evidence, and 2 counts of obstructing an investigation. Preston agreed to give testimony against his friend Liam. He named Liam as the mastermind behind the plot to take out Sarah. Liam was charged with murder, felony murder, robbery, conspiring to commit robbery, delaying arrest, tampering with evidence, and disturbing human remains. He entered a not guilty plea. At Liam's trial, Sarah's body had still not been located, but the evidence against him was compelling. The recorded confession allowed Liam to tell the story of the murder itself, the reason for it, and its consequences, all whilst the jury watched on.
It's good, money. What's up, bro? How you doing? How you doing? You want a cigarette? Nah, I'm good. I quit them. Okay. I was smoking a lot of cigarettes while I was tripping.
Really?
Yeah. I tripped for like 2 months straight.
What were you doing?
Sitting around.
What you been up to?
Hiding from the cops.
What happened?
Dude, you can't blame me for doing this, right? I gotta feel you up real quick, alright?
You're good.
No disrespect.
I'll show you.
No disrespect, okay?
Nothing.
Yeah, I got the FBI on my ass, dude. Alright, so I'm hanging out with her. She has... We went to the bank. She took some money out, not all of her money. We're counting it out, and then she goes to walk out the front door. I choke her out, drag her. I choke her out, drag her into the back, put her in a bathroom, and then I had to go straight to work. So Preston came over, took the body, put it in the bushes. So I have to leave. I dropped my phone at Sarah's house. My phone was at Sarah's house.
Well, you left your phone?
Yeah, I lost it. I couldn't find it. I had to go to work. I had timed everything out so that...
Why did you take your phone? You should have left it in your fucking pocket.
Dude.
What were you doing?
Strangling someone. I couldn't find it, dude. It ended up being out in the driveway. And then I was at work. I had a full night of work, except I left work a couple times, which looks sketchy. I look for my phone though, which is a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, you gotta look for your phone. Yeah, you can't.
Which is kind of me losing my phone was kind of a good thing, because the cops are like, oh, he's hanging out with her, he lost his phone, he's going back and forth between his house looking for it. And then I get off work that night, go straight over. Preston and I go over to her house, take her safe. I had planned Sarah's situation for me to be interrogated by cops. That was whole part of my plan, to make me look not guilty.
What did you end up throwing off the bridge?
You didn't hear about it? It was all over the news.
Right, but I didn't know if you went through.
Yeah. And the worst part is, we threw her off the bridge, and the body never showed up.
It's probably frozen.
It's probably all the way out in the ocean.
And it's frozen, so she's not coming up anytime soon. Her body's probably at the bottom of the ocean, or she got eaten by a shark or something.
Yeah.
Bro, this is like a movie, bro.
And then Preston and I had these walkie-talkies to communicate with. We just used them again. And then Preston comes over the bridge, goes around, makes a U-turn, comes up behind me. The two of us throw the body over, and then we're out.
Bro, it was good seeing you, bro. Yeah. When I come back down, let's fucking do something. Listen, look at me. Be safe, alright?
Yeah.
Don't do any fucking stupid.
Listen, I'm not gonna let Preston do anything dumb. I did something really dumb, and I planned it out for half a year. I have patience. I got it.
It's good talking to you, bro.
Good talking.
Take it easy, bro. Safe travels, alright?
You too.
You got everything?
Yeah.
Alright, peace out.
His propensity to brag pretty much sealed his fate. Additionally, they heard from Preston, who told the court his story.
Was there a point in time in 2016 where you learned something about Sarah Stern and her coming into something?
Yeah, I learned that she found a shoebox full of money at her house in Avon.
Did you ask any questions about that money when you first learned about it?
I asked how much it was, and I was told that it was in the range of about $100,000.
After first learning about that box of money or that money, $100,000, whatever it was, did that money ever come up on previous or prior occasions in the future?
It did.
Okay. And how did that happen? What types of conversations did you have about it?
Well, at first we started discussing the fact that it was a lot of money and what we would do if we had that type of money. And then the conversation evolved into, well, what if we did have that type of money, specifically her money? And that was when the idea to rob her came about.
Okay. Now, the first time he told you about Sarah's money, where were you?
We're at our house, 11 Holly Street.
When was the next specific conversation where that money was brought up?
At Clancy's Tavern, where I worked.
Okay.
I was towards the end of a shift. Things were slowing down. Liam came in with another friend, Sean McMahon and Billy McAvoy, and he brought up the money, passed the comment that it was the type of money that somebody would kill for.
Liam claimed that Anthony's tape of him speaking was him simply talking about a movie's plot, something he was sharing with Anthony because he was a filmmaker. He also asserted that Preston was just a liar, and that he was in fact innocent. But his lies didn't work. Liam was given a life sentence without parole after being found guilty on each of his 7 charges. For the desecration of Sarah's remains, he received an additional 10-year sentence. As the judge noted in court, Preston did everything but wrap his hands around Sarah's neck, even though he did not personally murder her. He was fully aware of the situation put forward by Liam, but decided willingly to betray his prom date. He could have put a stop to it at any time, gone to the police, intervened personally, warned Sarah, but he chose money over human life. However, Preston Taylor, in contrast to Liam, apparently expressed regret for his actions, saying, "There's so many things about this scenario I wish I could take back and make right. I should have known better and done something to stop this, and I wish more than anything I had. I'm sorry." Preston Taylor was sentenced to a prison term of 20 years. Father Michael left the court as Preston spoke. Preston's words didn't change what he had done. He simply wasn't interested in hearing any justifications, defences or regrets. None of this would bring Sarah back. Michael remarked, "I was devastated and numb from shock the day I learned from detectives Sarah was murdered. I've had horrific dreams and nightmares. The horrid act of what happened to her body haunts me every day. I will never be able to hug Sarah again. Sarah has never been found, and in reality, she never will be. Sadly lost at sea." Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? Let me know down in the comments. Join the Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications for at least 2 new videos every week. Like the video to boost the signal of this case. Tasha Lucia was born on April 7th, 1987 in Fairfax, Virginia. But at the age of just 6 months, she moved to Charleston, which became her home. She was described by her family as a beautiful soul, an angel truly loved by many. They said that she loved to live and lived to love. Continuing, her heart, while guarded for strangers, always remained true and open for her family and friends who never doubted her love or loyalty. The family said that she loved the beach ever since she was a young child, letting her feet sink into the warm sand and her face be washed over by the salty sea, somewhere they say was her second home. Her family say when Tasha entered her room, her loving presence soothed your soul, and her beautiful genuine laughter invited you to join in. Where there was Tasha, there was always love, belly-aching laughter and silliness. They stated, "Our world has missed out on a truly amazing woman." On Sunday, February the 10th, 2013, Tasha Lucia was 25 years old. Tasha worked at Locklear's Beach City Grills in Charleston County, South Carolina. Normally reliable and punctual, on this day she wasn't present when her shift started. Co-worker and friend Jessica Nelson realised Tasha was absent and she called her on her cell phone, but there was no answer. As the day drew on, Jessica called her several more times, but still Tasha didn't answer and didn't return her calls. The entire shift passed by, with many continued failed attempts to contact Tasha. Jessica and Tasha's other co-workers were now growing more concerned about where their friend was. So after work, Jessica and a fellow employee went to Tasha's house at 5 o'clock that afternoon. She couldn't ignore her gut feeling that something was amiss, she just couldn't shake it. Tasha didn't live by herself. She resided in James Island in Charleston County, South Carolina, with her partner, Robert Kronsberg. When Jessica and the other co-worker arrived at Tasha's house, they repeatedly knocked on the door, but there was no response to this either. They noticed that the living room window was in fact open. They persevered and were finally able to enter the apartment. Now in the apartment, they heard loud snores coming from one of the bedrooms. They knew right away that boyfriend Robert was home and he was sleeping on the bed. They woke him up and asked where Tasha was, but they couldn't understand what he replied because he was just mumbling, saying nothing of value. They scoured the entire home in search of Tasha after realising that what Robert was saying made no sense, and then they discovered her laying on the bed in another bedroom. She was covered by a sheet. They pulled back the sheet, revealing a large knife plunged into her chest. There was no chance of reviving their friend. Tasha had already passed. The 2 women were shocked and terrified. They fled outside whilst yelling for help and they called 911. Tasha's friends knew about her and Robert's relationship history. This is what originally prompted them to take her work absence so seriously. They knew that he had a history of hitting her. They'd even seen her with bruises in the past, but they never thought he would push it this far. They never believed that their friend Tasha would end up how they found her. The friends were aware that the relationship was poisonous and unstable because they frequently fought. They would break up and then get back together in a seemingly never-ending cycle. Police then arrived and promptly took Robert into custody. Based on the information and evidence gathered, they announced that they were looking for no one else in this investigation. Robert Kronsberg was charged with Tasha's murder. However, Robert entered a not guilty plea, not helping the innocent image that he wished to portray. Robert's cover photo on Facebook was the horrific chainsaw scene from American Psycho.
I grew up actually pretty privileged till I was about 12 years old. My parents had a lot of money, but my father, he had a drug problem, and so I went from living in a mansion to living in a room in the back of someone's house that had a bathroom connected to it. I didn't have very many friends growing up at all, because I think I kind of threw people off. I was a very sad, very depressed child. So as I grew older, just drugs and alcohol just helped me cope with the thing.
The case went to trial. The prosecution said that Robert and Tasha had an on-off relationship and frequently argued, and that on February the 10th, 2013, one of those fights escalated and tragically led to Tasha's passing. They claimed that Tasha met up with friends on February the 9th, the day before she passed away. The jury saw photos of a happy Tasha that were taken only hours before she passed. The court heard that she had a fun final night on Folly Beach with her friends. That same day, Robert attended work and afterwards he went to a party. However, the prosecution informed the jury that this did not prevent him from trying to start a text message argument with Tasha. According to her friends, Tasha's behaviour altered after receiving a text from Robert. When they both arrived home, the fight quickly moved from text message to verbal. The jury was told, "See, the defendant was angry. When Tasha got home, he and Tasha argued about her ex-boyfriend, and you will hear in his own words what he did to the person he supposedly cared about." The disagreement then became physical. The prosecution informed the jury he hit her really hard. He hit her because she was yelling for help. According to the prosecution, Tasha's life was taken on February the 10th, somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m, meaning that she could have been laid there for 17 hours whilst her co-workers attempted to phone her. Detective Richard Holmes of the Charleston Police Department testified in front of the jury. He backed up the story that Tasha and Robert got into a fight over her ex-boyfriend and their own intimacy. Therefore, he ended up attacking her as a result. The prosecution continued. What is believed to have happened is Tasha was allegedly strangled and choked, and then shockingly she was beaten with a hammer. Still showing signs of life, Robert still wasn't happy. He went to the kitchen, grabbed a butcher knife and plunged it into her at least 15 times. Later, when her co-workers discovered her, the knife was still inside her. Robert was in bed when police arrived. He seemingly went back to sleep after Jessica and the other co-worker fled the apartment. When the police roused him, he sat upright and had a crazy look in his eyes, according to testimony given to the court. He appeared to be muttering and mumbling. They were unable to understand what he was saying. A bottle of vodka, some marijuana, ibuprofen, and a knife were discovered by the police on the nightstand next to the bed that he was laying in. When authorities discovered Robert, he was covered in blood and wounds on the inside of his arm that appeared to have been self-inflicted. His left wrist had a 3-inch vertical laceration. Robert asserted that he attempted to take his own life twice, but was unsuccessful in both attempts. The court was informed that Robert also confessed to having used cocaine when he was transported to the hospital for treatment. The prosecution presented the jury with an audio recording of what they claimed was Robert's confession. Robert was hospitalized at the time that this was recorded. In the audio clip, Robert is heard admitting that he tried to take his own life after attacking Tasha. Paul Polensky, one of Robert's friends, testified before the court, but it wasn't in his defense. Paul consented to give testimony for the prosecution. They both worked together at a pizza shop in James Island, and the court heard that they were close friends. He claimed that on February the 10th, right after Tasha passed at the hands of Robert, Robert's phone sent him a text message with the words 911 written 4 times. Robert urged Paul to contact him back from the office landline rather than his cell phone. When they spoke, Robert said, "Don't freak out, but I just killed my girlfriend." Paul said that because he had known Robert for a long time and even assisted Robert in finding employment, he assumed Robert was only joking. He had worked with Robert the previous evening and was aware that he attended a party after work, so at first he didn't take it seriously and assumed that Robert was just intoxicated and messing about. He soon understood though that this wasn't a joke. Paul knew Robert and Tasha were bickering that night, but he was unaware of what degree until Robert explained what he had just done. According to Paul's testimony, which offered confirmation of the prosecution's story, Robert claimed on the phone that after hitting Tasha, she started screaming and he tried to choke her to keep her quiet. Robert promised Tasha that if she would stop screaming, he would let her up. According to Paul's testimony, Robert tried to calm her down 3 times, but she wouldn't stop crying, so he grabbed the first thing that was laying next to him. Sadly, the nearest item was a hammer. He used this hammer to strike her repeatedly. Paul said that he did not call the police because Robert had promised to give himself in the next day. The forensic pathologist, Dr. Susan Presnell, testified in court that Tasha's passing was a result of homicide. The jury was shown photos that were taken during the autopsy. Tasha was shown in the photos as having a black eye, a broken nose, and several scrapes and bruises on her face, lip, and neck. Some of the blows appear to have been produced by the hammer. Tasha's chest also showed clear evidence of the attack. The hammer was discovered in the house with Tasha's DNA still on it. The prosecutor told the jury that there should be no room for doubt regarding Robert's guilt and that it would be simple for them to convict him. Prosecutor questioned the jury, if it wasn't murder, what was it? There was no disputing Robert's role in Tasha's passing. The defense, however, stated, this case is going to be about what was going on in his heart that night, and that's what you're going to have to decide throughout the course of this week. The defense argued that Robert did take Tasha's life, but that it actually happened during a heated altercation. Even though Robert and Tasha clashed about Tasha's ex-boyfriend, the defense maintained that her death wasn't the result of murder. It was, in fact, an impulsive act of passion. The defense encouraged the jury to keep their attention solely on the facts and to suppress their emotions. The defense assured the jury that his client was not getting away with anything in this case, and that instead he was being held accountable for the right offense. He said that Robert was simply acting erratically in this instance and there was no malice involved. They said this was all done in a frenzy, an uncontrolled frenzy with alcohol, a frenzy without the benefit of collecting one's thoughts. They said that Robert would not have done this to Tasha if he wasn't inebriated, that on that evening he was powerless to control his own behaviour.
And next thing I knew, she was on the ground and she wasn't moving. Started screaming. I was freaking out. I was throwing things all over the room, and I looked down and there was a knife, and I just stabbed her body like 17 times apparently. But I think that she had already been deceased. I can't be 100% sure.
The jury was informed by the judge that although Robert was charged with murder and they could find him guilty of that charge, they could also take into account the lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter and find him guilty of that charge if they felt it was appropriate given the evidence that they had just heard.
In a frenzy, an uncontrolled frenzy, a frenzy without thought,
he makes a decision, and that decision is to grab a 15-inch butcher knife, to go down, get on his knees intimately, face to face with the person he is supposed to care about, and stab. And I am sorry to do this, but that's not it.
Tasha
stab
was stabbed at least
stab
11 times.
Stab.
Her mother described what it was like to watch the trial.
Horrific, I guess. Very horrific. Disturbing.
When the judge gave her time to speak after the verdicts, she called Kronsberg evil and asked for the maximum sentence.
For this evil to have the rights of life while I am left to forever grieve for my daughter, unlike an object bought that can be replaced, but a precious gift of life to love for a lifetime, is the cruelest evil of all.
After just 1 hour of deliberation, the jury found Robert guilty of murder, as well as having a weapon whilst committing a violent felony. At that point, Robert started cursing in the courtroom, and he had to be taken out so that he could calm down. He then apologised for taking Tasha away from her mother, Kimberly, saying, "I'm so sorry that I took her away from you." Since this was Robert's first offence, his attorney urged the judge give him a 35-year sentence with a 5-year parole period. The judge heard testimony from Robert's relatives before Judge Roger Young delivered his verdict. They informed the judge that Robert was a troubled individual who had long battled substance abuse. His daughter, his loved ones, and now his freedom had all been taken from him by his addiction. The defence's appeal for a 35-year sentence was rejected by the judge. Speaking directly to Robert, he stated that he did not think it was an act of passion, and that one factor made it obvious that it was not a spontaneous act. You thought she was dead and walked away from her, heard that she was still alive and went back to finish her off. This means that Robert potentially had a chance to save her life. Robert was given a life sentence without the chance of parole. However, he is no longer serving this sentence. Robert Kronsberg was discovered dead in his cell at the Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia on December 6, 2017. He took his own life. Do you believe justice was served here? Let me know in the comments. Boost the signal of this case by hitting like on the video. This is the true story of Terry Edmonds, a kind and intelligent 17-year-old girl, someone that was already finding their own way in the world, that resided in a notoriously safe town. So when she was seen on train station CCTV before vanishing into thin air, where would authorities even begin to discover what had happened? The train station, the hostel where she lived, her 26-year-old boyfriend's house, or somewhere not yet discovered. Terry Edmonds of Hadlow in Kent, UK, was described as a joyful and bright girl who was both brilliant and intelligent. She had 8 A-grade GCSEs, she was independent, and when she was 16 she made the decision to leave the family home. She went to live in a Christian Alliance Housing Association hostel in Royal Tunbridge Wells. Her mother Helen said that this was Terry's choice to be more grown up and stand on her own 2 feet, and not due to a bad home situation. Terry aspired to be a nurse because she was compassionate, kind and headstrong. She was too young to start training at the time, but she planned on going to the Hugh Christie Technology College in Tunbridge to make this nursing dream come true. Her mother said she had her whole life ahead of her, and it was to be a good life. With lots of friends and being so well liked, everyone expected great things. On April the 17th, 2006, now 17 years old, Terry had a boyfriend. He was Nigel Fitzgerald and he was 26 years old, 9 years her senior. He lived with his mother and sister in Hadlow near Tunbridge. Nigel said that he dropped Terry off at 12:20 PM that day outside the Pizza Hut in Royal Tunbridge Wells where he worked. He said he later received a text message from Terry saying she was going to Maidstone, and then a second text message saying she was on her way to Tunbridge. He was expecting to meet up with her again later that day. He said, "Terry said she wanted to talk to me about something, but that it wasn't bad and we could talk after work." To meet up with boyfriend Nigel in Royal Tunbridge Wells, Terry had to take the train. She was captured on CCTV getting off the train in Royal Tunbridge Wells at 6:23 PM. With a population of around 55,000 people, Royal Tunbridge Wells is a small town in Kent, England, around 30 miles from central London. The area was described by locals as safe, wealthy and middle class, and that women could feel very safe walking around at night. They said it was a peaceful life, and that crimes don't really happen here. So we should expect 17-year-old Terry to be safe on her journey. However, the time that Terry and Nigel were to meet came and passed. Nigel began texting Terry to see where she was. It was unusual for her not to respond to text messages, especially those from Nigel. The couple normally texted each other daily and at least hourly. He got no answer from her after sending 20 text messages. Starting to worry, he contacted Terry's mother, Helen. Helen, also unable to reach her daughter, made the decision to phone the police. Police started searching for Terry. Nothing immediately turned up. They held a press conference to ask the public for assistance. Terry's story shocked the locals because for them this was a first-time occurrence. Royal Tunbridge Wells was meant to be safe. These things didn't happen here. On April the 27th, they released the CCTV footage of Terry in the train station. On that footage, there were several potential witnesses identified by the police. These individuals were all quickly found and were willing to help the investigation to move forward. However, none of these individuals held any information. All that police knew is that Terry arrived at the train station at 6:23 PM, and then she vanished. On April the 29th, police discovered a suspicious dark green suitcase under a ramp in a car park. When they opened the suitcase, they discovered the unthinkable. 12 days after she went missing, the search for Terry was over. The body in the suitcase was identified as Terry Edmonds. Mother Helen said in a press conference, "My worst fears came true when I heard that Terry's body had been found. It is every mother's worst nightmare. It changed our family's life forever." Paying tribute to Terry, she stressed, "I will never get over losing my beautiful daughter. She was young and clever and had her whole life in front of her. She had lots she wanted to do. I don't understand how someone could do this to her. Someone must know who did this. Someone must have a son or a husband or a partner or even a daughter who knows something, or knows someone who has been behaving differently since Terry went missing on Easter Monday.
I am begging you, please, if anybody knows anything, however little, get in touch, because anything to help catch the person that's done this will help.
According to the autopsy report, Terry was raped. She had scratches on her back and was throttled with the scarf that she was wearing, and police were able to determine that she was most likely smothered with a sheet found near the scene. The sheet was covered in blood when they discovered it, as were Terry's sneakers and a lighter. They sent the suitcase and the other items of evidence to be tested by the crime lab. The first suspect they looked into was Terry's boyfriend, Nigel. His DNA was found on Terry's body. He was under greater suspicion by some due to him being 26 years old. He was arrested in Hadlow on April 30th, 2006. He was interviewed by police and his home, which he shared with his mother and sister, was searched. However, his colleagues were able to provide a solid alibi for his whereabouts at the time that Terry vanished. And after additional testing, police were able to rule him out as a suspect. Police forensic investigators now look to the suitcase for answers. They were able to obtain a DNA sample from the luggage's handle. Police immediately identified and then brought in the owner of the case. This suspect was interviewed by the police, revealing a detail that startled them. The suspect told the police that yes, they did own the suitcase, but that they recently donated the item to the Salvation Army. The suspect's story was investigated, and what sounded like a weak excuse actually checked out. However, this meant the police were once again at a dead end. Investigators returned to the apparent scene of Terry's passing. They discovered that the car park where her body was found was not a part of her usual route, but that she sometimes used it as a shortcut back to the hostel where she lived. After scouring CCTV, it showed Terry entering the car park. However, the cameras at the other side of the building did not show her exiting, as would have been expected. Police therefore deduced that Terry was ended somewhere in that car park. This car park was home to several homeless people. It was relatively unmonitored and gave a source of shelter. Police then approached the homeless community sleeping in the parking structure. They asked if any of them had a suitcase, had lost a suitcase, or had even seen a suitcase. They all responded, no. However, a police officer then recalled that there was one homeless individual that he knew of that carried his belongings around in a suitcase. They went to the man in question and asked him about it. He stated that no, he did not have one, something the police now believed was an outright lie. Police now believe they were on the right track. They once again went to go and speak with the homeless man. His story changed. He now confirmed that he did have a suitcase which he kept in the stairwell and contained all of his clothing, but that the suitcase was stolen. Police then decided to arrest him. The man was Philip Bell, 21 years old. Philip Bell dropped out of school at the age of 15. He did for a short period work as a removal man, but he then became involved in petty crime. This lifestyle escalated and he eventually became a drug dealer living on the streets. Philip had been living in Royal Tunbridge Wells for nearly 2 years. He was addicted to a variety of illicit and illegal substances. He was, at the time of Terry's disappearance, living in the stairwell of the car park that Terry walked into, but never made it out of. Forensic investigators discovered Terry's DNA in the basement level of the stairs. They now believe that this was where Terry was attacked and subsequently passed. Philip denies that he had anything to do with the allegations regarding Terry. He claimed that he was not on the stairwell, that he had no idea who she was, and that he had never even seen her. These claims weren't enough to deter the police in their ongoing investigation. Police took his clothing in as evidence to try and further tie him into the case. They discovered scratch marks on his trousers and knees, consistent with the nature of the assault. He claimed that he received these scratches from playing football. Strangely, police could confirm he was actually involved in playing football, but when the other players were interviewed, they all confirmed that he did not fall on his knees at any point. But would this be enough to gain a charge from the Crown prosecution? Police were forced to grant Philip Bell bail since they had no physical evidence to charge him, only circumstantial evidence. Police believed that Philip Bell was responsible for Terry's death, but they needed physical evidence to prove it beyond all reasonable doubt. They began combing through endless hours of CCTV footage in search of anything that would help the case. That is when they noticed Philip Bell on CCTV taking the same path as Terry Edmonds, following closely in her footsteps, entering the car park moments after she did. An hour later, CCTV showed Philip exiting the car park, but as we know, Terry never made it out. They also noticed that Philip was wearing a different pair of jeans when he entered the car park than when he exited the car park. One pair of jeans had a slim fit while the others were baggy. Police believe that Philip changed his jeans after getting Terry's DNA on them. This also matches up with the scratches on his knees. With this new evidence and a stronger case, on August 1st, 2006, Philip was once again detained. He was questioned about why he was in the car park, to which he responded that he was never there. Police then showed Philip the CCTV footage that showed him entering the car park. He then simply admitted that yes, he was in the car park. However, Philip claimed to have smoked 7 grams of cannabis, so he couldn't have been responsible for what happened. However, an analysis studying the CCTV footage revealed that Philip was not under the influence. His stories were starting to be broken down one by one. To add to the evidence against Philip, police took his hoodie in for forensic testing. They discovered a small marking of blood around the size of a penny on the hoodie. This was analysed and was proven to belong to Terry Edmonds. They collected and inspected more of his belongings, including his sleeping bag, which showed 2 significant stains. Both of these 2 contained Terry's DNA. Terry's blood was also found on a pink sheet with a partial footprint mark that matched Philip's shoes. Finally, they discovered reproductive fluid on Terry's underwear that matched Philip Bell's DNA. Bell was then charged with first-degree murder. This is the police's theory as to what occurred. They suspected that when he noticed Terry taking a shortcut home, he followed her into the car park. He then tried to seduce her, and when she refused, he became enraged. A struggle ensued in which Terry passed. Only then did he sexually assault her. All he had as a means of disposal of the body was his suitcase, so he forced her into the fetal position, stuffed her into the suitcase, and dumped her beneath the car park. Philip's trial began at Maidstone Crown Court a year after Terry was reported missing on April 23, 2007. He pled not guilty, and his defence cast a finger at another homeless person that resided in the same car park. It turns out that this other man was actually a convicted murderer. To the jury, this was enough to cast doubt on Philip's guilt. They believed that this other man could be responsible for Terry's passing. The trial lasted 6 weeks, and the jury failed to reach a decision after 22 hours. The second trial with a new jury began on January 10th, 2008. According to the defence, Terry's blood was on Philip's hoodie not because he attacked her, but because Philip walked by the location where Terry was, and the blood then got on him. The jury once again failed to reach a verdict after 19 hours of deliberation. The trial then began for the third time. The prosecution pursued the defence's claim that Philip's hoodie contained Terry's blood since he brushed against it somewhere in the car park. However, they tested the stain and said that if he had touched the blood at a later time, it would have dried and turned flaky. But the blood on the hoodie was fresh. A 15-year-old girl also testified that Philip Bell had invited her to the same car park stairway that he was staying in. But on this occasion, she was able to flee because thankfully Philip was interrupted. This time, after just 3 hours, the jury returned with a verdict. Philip Bell was guilty. He was then sentenced to 28 years in prison. Terry's family was able to finally watch their daughter, sibling, niece and cousin receive the justice that she deserved. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? Let me know down in the comments. On Thursday, January the 3rd, 2019, Savannah Spurlock, aged 22, planned to go out that night with a small group of friends. It would be her first night out in months after giving birth to twin sons just a few weeks prior. Having twins was understandably overwhelming, so their father looked after them to relieve some of the pressure from Savannah. Additionally to the twins, she also had two other boys, who were then aged 4 and 2. Ellen Spurlock, Savannah's mother, volunteered to watch the boys while Savannah was enjoying her first night of freedom in close to a year. Savannah, Ellen and the kids lived in Lexington, Kentucky. Savannah's plans to go out with friends were welcomed by Ellen because she felt her daughter needed a break. She was happy to help make the night happen. Mother Ellen lent her car to Savannah for the night. Excited for a night of fun and letting her hair down, she drove the car to one friend's house. There, she left the car. The three friends then drove to a bar, confusingly called the Other Bar in Lexington, in one of the friends' cars. After enjoying some drinks together, one of the friends left early in the night, but Savannah and her remaining friend kept the night going. However, as can often happen on a night out, the two friends then had an argument. The two then split up, the friend went home, but Savannah stayed out alone in the bar. A few hours later, at around 2:30 AM, Savannah too departed the bar. Soon after, she FaceTimed Mother Ellen to let her know she would return later that morning. Following the call, Ellen went to sleep, believing her daughter would return home shortly. Following that call, Ellen went to sleep, believing that her daughter would return home shortly. When Ellen awoke the next morning, she came to the heart-stopping realization that her beloved daughter never arrived home. Savannah didn't often go on nights out and was very family conscious. Ellen knew that Savannah would not likely go AWOL and leave her boys without their mother for a long period of time of her own free will. Panic now rising, she tried to call her, but her phone was either off or her battery was dead.
We do not have her cell phone. So we would like to have the cell phone. We're looking for her and the cell phone. But we know for sure that the cell phone went out of service around 8:30 to 8:45 that morning. How it went out of service, we don't know. But we know that it did, and it hasn't been turned back on.
Later that day, Ellen could no longer sit and wait. She had to take action. She reported her daughter missing.
Savannah's about 5 foot tall. She's 140 pounds. She had kind of reddish brown auburn hair. She has some tattoos, a rose on her shoulder, a Bible verse, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And on her back, she has a tattoo that says, I am her daughter.
Police began their investigation. The Lexington bar security footage was obtained by the police after speaking with Savannah's friends. This was the last confirmed sighting of her at this time. On this CCTV footage, Savannah, along with 3 men, were seen leaving the bar. None of the men that she left with were previously known to her, according to information from her friends. The friends also said that they hadn't seen or spoken to the men in the bar either. When her daughter FaceTimed her, Ellen claimed that she appeared to be fine and unconcerned. Savannah was in a car when Ellen spoke with her and she saw a man behind the wheel. The man wasn't someone that Ellen recognised. The fact that she had seen her daughter being driven by a man she didn't know now brought feelings of dread. Although Ellen claimed that she couldn't see them very well, she said that there were 1 or 2 other people in the back of the car. She said they were hollering and talking over each other, so she couldn't really hear what was going on. Ellen responded that Savannah did not appear disturbed and that nothing appeared unusual when asked by the police as to whether she appeared distressed. Savannah assured her of her safety. I will be home later this morning, I promise. Police started searching for the males that Savannah was seen with in the video. Through their investigation, they were able to identify both the men and the vehicle that Savannah was riding in. They confirmed that Savannah was not familiar with the men prior to this night, but that the 3 men did all know each other. They were close friends. Police believed that 2 of the males were in the car with Savannah, while the 3rd followed them in a different vehicle. Police then created a timeline of the night. Savannah indeed left the other bar with the 3 men. The 4 of them then travelled to a property owned by one of the men. The man that owned the house was named David Sparks. He was 23 years old. They travelled 40 miles or so from Lexington to Garrett County. When they arrived in Garrett County, police could not yet determine whether Savannah stayed there or moved to yet another location. David Sparks and the other two males were taken in for questioning by the police. David acknowledged that that evening the three of them did indeed exit the bar with Savannah. All four of them then travelled to Garrett County. However, the two other men eventually left, leaving David and Savannah alone.
For the first time, we were able to watch police interviews with the two men who were with them that night. They all ended up at Sparks' Garrett County home. They said Spurlock was alive when they left the house.
And he hurt that girl? Yeah. What'd he tell you? Yeah, I feel like he eventually would. Have you asked him that yet? Yeah. I asked him. He's been adamant that he don't know nothing. That's why I asked him, like, bro, you need to be 100% on point, because this is with us all. Like I told him, at the end of the day, bro, like, we left at your house, bro. You know what I'm saying? Me and left. So whatever happened after that, you need to go ahead, man, up and say what need to be said.
David, however, denied that anything happened between the two of them. He told authorities that he used the couch as a bed, so that Savannah could use the actual bed. David said he couldn't remember the time, but he recalled Savannah waking up at some point and asking for the location of the house that they were in. He claims that he told her and then went back to sleep. She had left by the time he woke up later that morning at around noon. He speculated that she may have got in touch with someone and given them the address so that they could take her home to her family.
At that point, her friend had left her. She was upset and she trusted that they were good people.
Cops also released these images of Savannah standing outside with no coat.
That made me sick to my stomach. You can just look at her face and tell that is not Savannah. Something's wrong.
Do you think it's credible that she would have walked out the front door and into the night?
I do not believe her just walking out that door. She would have called one of us. She would have called her mom. She would have called someone to come get her. I hope that she is being held somewhere and she is still fighting for her babies and her family and her friends.
Kayla Hamblin is part of Savannah's inner circle. She says the night the mom of four vanished, Savannah was with a different friend for her first girls' night out.
I do think she was going through a tough time because she did just have the two twin boys. And at the time, she wasn't aware that she was having twins. She thought she was only having one baby. People can use that to say that she might have wanted to run away from her life, but she would never.
Kayla hopes Savannah will be found soon and has this emotional message for her best friend.
That I love you and I will never give up on finding you.
The Garrett County farm property owned by his parents was searched by police after obtaining a search warrant, but Savannah was nowhere to be found. Therefore, none of the men were detained or given any sort of legal notice.
Somebody out there, please, they know something. Put this nightmare to rest so we get some kind of closure.
Search teams have scoured hundreds of acres and discovered a piece of fabric the exact same color as the skirt Savannah was wearing the night she disappeared.
In July 2019, 6 months after the incident, David's father called the police to report that a bad smell was emanating from a location on his property. When the police arrived at the site, they discovered a small section of earth that had been previously disturbed. The earth covered a hole that was only 19 inches in depth. Under a rug, shrouded by trash bags, lay Savannah, clothing removed, feet taped together.
How was she missed? There she was the whole time.
That's something that I ask myself actually still when I think about Savannah, is how did we not find her? How did I not find her? I actually stood on the strawberry patch, like where it was.
As part of the initial investigation by Richmond Police Department, the 3 men last seen with Savannah Spurlock were identified and interviewed, one of which was David Sparks. The investigation indicates that Savannah Spurlock was seen at the residence of David Sparks during the morning hours of January the 5th. As a result of the ongoing investigation, David Sparks, 23 years old, of Lancaster, Kentucky, was arrested early this morning in connection to the recovery of Savannah Spurlock's body. About 4 months ago, I believe in February, law enforcement responded to the location on Fall Lick Road in Garrett County, at which time a search was done. The property is owned by some of Mr. Sparks' family members. I don't believe that there's any indication that she was placed there recently. I think that the odor is what kind of indicated, and that's what the information that we received yesterday, that's what led us there.
David was now detained by the police. However, he continued to plead his innocence. There were no signs that Savannah's body had been relocated, so it is unclear why she wasn't discovered when the area was examined after she was originally reported missing. The prosecution's case was based on the facts that Savannah was last seen with David, that she returned to the family-owned property, and that her body was also discovered there. The rug that was found covering Savannah was also identified by police as one from David's bedroom. A rug was found in his bedroom when it was checked a few days after Savannah was reported missing, but it was later discovered that this rug was a replacement. The investigation revealed that he got in touch with his sister on January the 5th to inquire about the rug's purchase since he desired a new one. Later that day, he was captured on camera in Walmart paying for a rug. Additional evidence embroiled him further. The closet door of his bedroom was covered in Savannah's blood. However, despite the evidence, the prosecution was unable to describe how Savannah passed, or what else occurred to her in the early hours of January the 4th. Therefore, they began discussions with David about a potential plea deal, since they thought that they wouldn't be able to prove any aggravating circumstances. David agreed to enter a guilty plea to murder and tampering with physical evidence. The plea deal detailed what occurred, but did not mention how Savannah passed. It read, "During the early hours of January the 4th, 2019, at 118 Price Court in Garrett County, Kentucky, the defendant, acting alone, intentionally caused the death of Savannah Spurlock. After doing so, he bound her legs and wrapped her in plastic bags. He later transported her body and buried her in the yard behind the residence. He did so with the intent to elude apprehension for the crime." David avoided a possible life sentence by entering this guilty plea. Due to COVID-19, the sentencing was broadcast live from the Lincoln County Jail on Zoom. Throughout the sentencing session, he remained silent.
You agreed at that time to plead guilty to the charges of murder, tampering with physical evidence, and abuse of a corpse. Recommendation of the Commonwealth was 50 years on the murder, 5 years on the tampering, 12 months on the abuse of the corpse. All concurrent for a total of 50 years. I will accept that recommendation and impose that sentence.
He will be qualified for parole after completing a 20-year sentence.
When the judge sentenced David Sparks to 50 years in prison, Savannah Spurlock's family had to watch it on a laptop.
I think he got off real easy and real cushy being behind a computer screen, behind a mask, not having to face the people he devastated in person.
Andy Sims, the Commonwealth's attorney, outlined their decision to accept a plea offer as opposed to proceeding with the trial and asking for a life sentence. He said, "We did not have proof beyond a reasonable doubt for any aggravating circumstances. So, because we didn't have any aggravators, we couldn't seek the 3 highest penalties in the Commonwealth." The 2 other males who were captured on camera leaving the bar that evening with Savannah and David were not charged in connection with Savannah's passing. What do you believe happened that night? Do you think this punishment fits the crime? Let me know down in the comments. Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. When you choose a romantic partner, someone you plan to spend the rest of your life with, it should be someone that you trust. Someone that makes you feel the best version of you. That helps you to prosper and build a future together as a partnership. You should be willing to help them through the tough times, overcoming any issues that they may have. However, sometimes these issues may be just too great to beat. Some demons are too strong. This is the case of Olivia Bergstrom. Olivia Bergstrom was born on November the 3rd, 1997 in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. Father David and Mother Kirsten would later separate and find new relationships with Alex and Charles. Olivia was well loved with a large blended family. She had 2 brothers, Lars and Ty, as well as 2 stepbrothers. She also had many aunties and uncles and was close to her grandparents. Her grandfather said, Olivia was a smart, vibrant, beautiful young woman with a bright future ahead of her. Olivia was a lover of animals who never met a horse she couldn't win over. She was passionate about living a healthy life. She had a dog named Scarlet. She loved her family fiercely. Her mother said she was an unbelievably cute toddler with spiral curls. She grew to being a precocious flower girl, morphing into a French-speaking, pony-dreaming, amazing skiing teen, into the beautiful, smart and driven woman she became. Olivia had a lifelong passion for caring for animals, especially horses. She spent a significant portion of her time in barns and next to her horse, Thunder. Olivia's passion for nature and animals inspired her to investigate a holistic health way of life. Her feelings were so strong that she became vegan as a teenager. She honed her vegan cooking skills, which would help her find employment later. She adored the outdoors, especially being near the mountains and water. She was also a gifted artist and a very intelligent young woman. She was a dedicated dog mum to Scarlett. After graduating Holliston High School in 2016, Olivia then enrolled at Wentworth Institute of Technology to pursue a degree in interior design, with the intention of graduating in 2020. Her Instagram bio read, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive." Olivia stated on her public Facebook profile that she had been dating 24-year-old Benjamin or Ben Walsh since December 16th, 2015. Ben had previously attended Grove City College, a conservative Christian liberal arts college in Grove City, Pennsylvania. His Instagram profile read, "Waging a war on egotism through the promotion of existential aesthetics and boundless love." I'd actually like you to comment down below exactly what you think that means. His social media content prior to his relationship with Olivia shows that he liked the aesthetics of cigarettes and cannabis culture. He had an interest in knives and posted some other edgy content. He tattooed his own hand with the Triforce symbol from the Zelda game franchise. However, it appeared that Olivia had been a positive effect on Ben. His Instagram feed turned more to nature, wild mushrooms and good times since their relationship began. Mike Walsh, Ben's father, said that his son sometimes struggled with mental illness, and that he went through periods of struggling with substance abuse. Another relative suggested that Ben had been in and out of hospital, and had also spent time in the Belmont psychiatric facility. In the summer of 2017, the couple moved in together in a 3rd-floor apartment in Needham, and things appeared to be going well. In October 2017, Ben left a note for Olivia in the home that they shared. It read, "Olivia, my love, may you forever be filled with healing, strength and fullness of life. You are my brightest light. Always, your Ben." On January the 14th, 2018, on Instagram, Ben posted an image with the caption, "I see myself growing with you. You gave me roots. You let me bloom." By February 2018, Olivia had turned 20 and was working hard at college. She now managed Cocoa Beat, a plant-based organic smoothie and juice cafe. Olivia truly had everything lined up to live a happy, peaceful and successful life. On February the 10th, 2018, just 27 days after Ben's Instagram post apparently fawning over Olivia, things would take a dramatic and tragic turn. Ben, who was believed to be intoxicated on both drugs and alcohol, turned on his apparently beloved Olivia. In a frenzied attack, he struck her multiple times with a sharp object. Olivia was left injured, incapacitated and helpless in the apartment that they shared. The apartment that she had made a sanctuary with crystals and home comforts, with the boyfriend that she loved and supported all throughout his substance and mental health issues. Ben then fled the scene, leaving Olivia alone. However, this wasn't the end of his depraved behaviour. He then drove to the Primavera restaurant in Millis, around 20 minutes from Needham. There, his family was celebrating a 70th birthday party with a meal and good company. Ben entered the restaurant and yelled, "I'm going to kill you all." A frenzied struggle ensued. Armed with a knife, Ben attacked his mother and stabbed her in the stomach. Then he attacked his father and stabbed him in the stomach as well. Ben's supportive father, Mike, was able to wrestle with his son, and along with the help of other relatives, including Ben's own brother, as well as restaurant bystanders, he was disarmed and subdued until the police and medics arrived. When authorities arrived, they saw a scene of chaos. Ben's mother was wrapped in tablecloths and bleeding from the abdomen. His mother and father suffered significant injuries inflicted by the son. Both parents were rushed to hospital for treatment. Thankfully, they both survived the attack. Authorities on the scene said that when Ben was arrested inside of the restaurant, it was actually his younger brother who told attending police officers to go and check on Olivia. Police later said that Ben also told at least one person at the restaurant, "I've killed my girlfriend."
According to police reports, the suspect, Benjamin Walsh, was combative, using profanities and yelling, "I'm going to kill you all." He did not have shoes on, and a detective noted his feet appeared filthy.
While being escorted to a police cruiser, Ben swore at officers and yelled once more, "I'm going to kill you all." Police recovered 3 knives, 2 that were in Ben's Jeep, and 1 that was wrapped in a tablecloth at the restaurant, and was given to the police by Jerry Gator, the restaurant's owner, who said that he found it on the floor inside.
It was just sad, but we just made sure that the EMTs had some space to do their work, and we cleared the room. When the police got there, that's when I noticed, Benjamin on the floor. Everyone knows, the Walshes in town, and they're just a wonderful family. She's very, she's a sweetheart, and we just couldn't believe that something like this would happen. So, our hearts go out to them.
Officers then rushed to the 3rd floor apartment on Marshall Street in Needham. After knocking on the door, they got no response from Olivia, a concerning sign that suggested something could be very wrong. They forcibly gained entry to the apartment, and there, jammed behind the front door, was 20-year-old Olivia Bergstrom. She was said to have been wearing minimal clothing, just boxer shorts. She had sadly already passed. Police found blood in the kitchen and on the floors, walls and stairwell, as well as on a door handle, steering wheel, ignition and keys of Ben's Jeep. The autopsy revealed just how frenzied this attack was. There was evidence of around 30 injuries made by a sharp implement all over the body.
His grandfather says he was not the Ben Walsh he knew.
Saturday night was a stranger.
He snapped. Something went wrong.
Something terrible. I can't say anymore.
Has he struggled with mental illness before?
Yes.
Benjamin was taken to the hospital upon his arrest for the injuries that he sustained during the struggle with both Olivia and his parents. On February the 13th, 2018, he was arraigned from his hospital bed.
I think his mental health, or lack thereof, is going to be the major issue going forward as this case proceeds in the court of law. And I think anything that may have happened it appears to be related to a significant mental health issue.
Ben pleaded not guilty to all charges. Jury selection was supposed to begin on March the 28th, 2022, but Benjamin decided to accept a plea deal. He ultimately pled guilty to the second-degree murder of Olivia Bergstrom, and he also pled guilty to assaulting his parents. The judge sentenced Ben to life in prison, but as part of the plea deal, he will have the right to seek parole after serving just 25 years. No motive has ever been given by Ben for these attacks. Paul Bergstrom, Olivia's grandfather, said in a statement released by the Norfolk District Attorney's Office, "Our hearts are broken at the thought of Olivia not being in our lives, taken from us and her future in a way we cannot comprehend." Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? Let me know down in the comments.
Kirsten Bergstrom has discovered that grief is a process. It's been only 2 months since her daughter Olivia was murdered, but Kirsten is determined to carry forward the causes Olivia loved.
Everything that she did was 100%.
Next month, a celebration of Olivia's life will take place in Holliston, where she grew up.
We wanted to band together and celebrate Olivia's spirit and her life, and in a way that could help do some good in the future.
The goal, to raise money for a Holliston High School scholarship in her name.
She had all these passions, so what we asked people to do is tell us about their passion. And it didn't have to be Olivia's passion, just some passion that they had.
Christina, do you have anything to say for yourself? Do you have anything to say for yourself? Are you sorry?
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. This is the frustrating case of Molly Tibbetts, a case that brings to light the subjects of infidelity, of immigration, and the greatest loss that any parent could ever face. On May the 8th, 1998, in San Francisco, California, Molly Tibbetts, the daughter of Robert and Laura, was born. Although born in San Francisco, she moved to Brooklyn, Iowa. There she attended the BGM High School, where she graduated with her class in 2017. Following high school, she became a psychology major at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. Molly enjoyed life. Her enthusiasm for living was evident in her contagious smile, a smile that she was always ready to share with anyone that she encountered. She excelled at writing and speaking, sharing her opinions on a variety of challenging and complex topics, including mental health and self-esteem. Her abilities were recognized when she received 3 years of invitations to perform at the Iowa All-State competition. She fell in love with theatre after her first performance in a musical and cherished participating in school productions. In cross-country running, Molly pushed herself and incorporated running into her daily routine. She also had a great passion for children. Children loved her ability to make them laugh, and the way that she made them feel loved. She enrolled at the University of Iowa to pursue a career as a child psychologist so that she could assist young people with mental health problems. She also enjoyed participating in choir, in dance marathons, and singing. She excelled in finding new friends wherever she went. She started babysitting at a young age, where her love of children grew. In 2016, she started working a summer job at the GRMC day camp in Brooklyn, Iowa. By Thursday, July the 19th, 2018, Molly was 20 years old. Very unlike Molly, she didn't turn up to her job at the day camp, something that wasn't at all typical. Her boyfriend Dalton Jack realised she wasn't at work. He tried calling her many times but got no response. Calls from him went directly to voicemail. Messages went unread. A stark realization soon came to light. Neither her friends or family had seen or heard from her that entire day. She was then reported missing by Dalton to the police. Dalton claimed that as far as he knew, Molly was alone the night before, and that was the last time he heard from her. She was actually a guest at his home, a home he shared in Brooklyn, Iowa with his brother Blake Jack. Dalton explained to the police that Molly had stayed at their house so that she could take care of their pets. Meanwhile, he and his brother were out of town for a week of business. Police narrowed down the last sighting of Molly to be on the 18th of July. Dalton claimed that he watched a movie by himself in his hotel room that evening, and whilst he was there, a Snapchat message received at 10:30 p.m. was his final interaction with Molly. Police started looking for her after learning that she had gone for a run on July the 18th on a country road just outside of Brooklyn. Christina Stewart, a local woman, spoke with the police. She claimed to have known Molly and to have seen her running at 7:45 p.m. that day. When Christina drove past her, she knew it was Molly because it was someone that she already knew. There was no mistake. Police were now prompted to search the neighborhood for security cameras. Numerous volunteers, close friends, family members, and law enforcement agencies looked for Molly for weeks, searching anywhere they believed she may be.
Family, friends, and members of the Brooklyn community all came out in full force to look for Molly.
We just really hope that we can get her found and brought back home to the people that love her.
She's someone many volunteers and family alike describe as friendly and energetic.
She is about to start her sophomore year at the University of Iowa. She is probably about 5'2", brown hair, brown eyes, beautiful smile, great with kids.
Catherine Metz and her friends say they've known Molly since high school.
It's really scary. Like now I wouldn't want to go out by myself, really. I'm just really hoping we find her.
Her disappearance leaving many on edge. Friends say it's very unlike her to disappear like this.
I'm feeling kind of scared and nervous, and I'm anxious, hoping we can find her today.
You know, you wouldn't think that something like this would happen in the small town of Brooklyn.
Authorities say they've been looking all over town.
So far we've been searching by air and foot both.
But focused the majority of Friday's efforts on the fields between her house and where she was staying when she disappeared. Family says Molly spent Wednesday night dog sitting. These fields, a typical trail for the avid jogger. Early in the day, crews tried searching with helicopters, but weather wasn't in their favor.
As far as the air patrols go, because of the low cloud ceiling, they're not able to get certain aircraft up with the technology that we need.
Police finally obtained CCTV footage of Molly running. They now made progress in the investigation. The video showed cars passing Molly as she ran, but one truck stuck out because it circled back and passed her once more. The individual driving the truck was recognized by the police. He was Christian Bahina Riviera. He had been working under an alias at Uribe Farms, a nearby dairy farm, for 4 years as an undocumented immigrant from Mexico. He was captured on the CCTV footage of a house passing Molly in his Chevy Malibu. Christian was questioned by the police. After being questioned for hours, Christian eventually revealed that he had seen Molly that day despite his original denials.
Set up a Bring Molly Tibbetts Home Safe Reward Fund at First State Bank here in Brooklyn, Iowa. We believe that Molly is still alive, and if someone has abducted her, we are pleading with you to please release her. We are partnering with Crime Stoppers of Central Iowa to help facilitate the process of receiving information anonymously that we can use to pay for her release or information that would lead to her location. As of 10 o'clock this morning, we have raised $172,000 that will be paid to you as soon as Molly is safely home. It is our greatest hope that if someone has her, that they would just release her and claim that money that we have raised for her freedom.
He claimed to have circled back after seeing Molly running while he was driving because he thought she was attractive. The likelihood of finding Molly alive was diminishing. As the interrogation continued, Christian said that he exited the car and went up to Molly. He then followed her as she ran, and Molly yelled at him to leave her alone or she would be forced to call the police. He became furious due to this rejection, so furious that he claims he blacked out. He and Molly were both inside his truck when he came to from his blackout, but Molly was now no longer breathing. Christian drove her body to a cornfield in Brooklyn and buried her. Police were guided by Christian to the location of Molly's shallow grave. When they arrived, they noticed her running shoes. She had leaves and stalks from the cornfield all over her body. Molly had been jabbed with a sharp object multiple times, as indicated by an autopsy. Christian was charged with first-degree murder. He entered a not guilty plea despite having shown police where Molly's body was hidden, not forgetting that he admitted to harassing her and having her in his truck. At the trial, prosecution argued that no one else was involved in the crime and that only Christian was to blame for Molly's passing. In court, the jury was informed that the prosecution's case would be supported by 3 key arguments. A security camera that showed Molly running as Christian's truck sped past her. Statements that Christian made to the police, including the fact that he showed them where Molly's body was hidden. And the damning fact that Molly's DNA was discovered in his truck. Prosecutor Bart Claver told the court that given all the available evidence, there was no other reasonable explanation and Christian was guilty. The court was informed that Molly left for a run on July the 18th and did not come home. Instead, a month after she was reported missing, her heavily degraded remains were discovered because Christian led them there. Dalton Jack, Molly's boyfriend, gave a statement in court. He expressed his sorrow for her passing. He described Molly as a cheerful, vivacious and funny young lady. He said before the court that Molly went for a run almost every day. Dalton testified that they had been dating for 3 years and that he had been out of town for work on the day that she vanished. He claimed in court that he had worked on a team that erected a bridge about 140 miles from Brooklyn. The day Molly was last seen alive, according to testimony given in court, he worked a 12-hour shift before going out with the rest of his crew to drink and play games. He told the court that he stayed in a hotel that night instead of going back to Brooklyn. Dalton had a solid alibi. The prosecution informed the court that when Christian was apprehended, he confessed to the police that he drove past Molly and then drove past her again because he thought she was attractive. He then got out of his truck and ran alongside her, but Molly threatened to call the police, something which enraged him. After a struggle, he blacked out. The next thing he remembered was driving and finding her body inside of his truck. The court was informed that he drove to the cornfield, carried her to the location, and then buried her. The prosecution informed the jury that they thought there was a sexual motive involved in the attack. When she was discovered in the cornfield, she was wearing only socks and a sports bra. Her legs were parted. Molly's injuries were disclosed to the jury. She had between 7 and 12 injuries made by a sharp object, and that she had passed as the result of a blunt force. The prosecution's additional DNA evidence against Christian was presented to the court. The DNA of Molly was discovered in Christian's truck. Bloodstains on the truck's rubber trunk seal and trunk liner were found to contain Molly's DNA. The prosecution urged the jury to fully study the evidence because, if they did, there would be no room for doubt regarding Christian's guilt. The defense obviously disagreed with this. They described him as a devout Christian immigrant who entered the country illegally as a teenager in search of a better life. His attorney told the court that the police had closed Molly's case too quickly and that both Christian and his family deserved justice. The defense claimed that Christian was coerced into confessing falsely. She characterized her client as a helpful person who always followed instructions. She testified to the jury that the police interrogated him after he had just finished a 12-hour shift and broke him down over the course of many hours. They said that the interrogation persisted until it was suggested to Christian that maybe you just blacked out, telling the jury that his confession was false and pressured. The defense then made an effort to implicate boyfriend Dalton. They informed the jury that Dalton was anything but the ideal partner and actually had a short fuse. On the witness stand, Dalton acknowledged that he occasionally lost his temper and did get into altercations. Additionally, the defense informed the jury that Dalton wasn't a faithful boyfriend. Dalton said in court that he had cheated on Molly and he had fucked up. He said that Molly learned of his infidelity when she went through his phone's messages and she discovered the truth. Dalton, though, asserted that they had overcome it and had moved on. However, further questioning by the defense revealed that Molly was still upset about it 3 days prior to going missing, and the day before she was last seen alive, she brought it up once again. Dalton was now shown his phone records by the defense. He confirmed that the Snapchat that Molly sent him at 10:30 p.m. was his final contact with her, but in reality a Snapchat message was actually received at around 1 a.m. However, he vehemently denied any involvement in Molly's passing. For now, Dalton was absolved. Christian admitted to the court that he didn't tell the truth when he described what had transpired to the police. This was out of fear for the safety of his ex-partner and their young child. He claimed to the court that 2 other individuals were accountable for Molly's passing and not him. He claimed that on July the 18th, while he was in the shower, 2 men entered the trailer where he lives. These individuals were strangers to him. They had masks on. One man held a firearm while the other carried a knife. Christian testified that they forced him to drive to the country road just outside of Brooklyn to the location where Molly was. According to Christian's testimony, one of the men ended Molly and then placed her body inside of his truck. After that, they gave him instructions on how to dispose of the body. They then allegedly threatened him, according to Christian. He was warned to keep quiet or his daughter and ex-girlfriend would also be ended. He stated that's why, rather than telling the police the truth, he told them that he approached Molly and then blacked out. Forensic expert Michael Spence was called by the defense to testify regarding the DNA discovered in Christian's truck. Although he testified that more DNA was discovered, including that of at least one unknown male and a female, he concurred that Molly's DNA was found on bloodstains in the trunk. The mother of Christian's daughter gave testimony. She identified herself as Iris Gamboa and stated that she had lived with Christian for 4 years. The couple split up in 2017, but she said he was a good dad who gave their daughter $500 a month in child support, and that he also sent money to his parents in Mexico so they could build a new house. She told the court that he had never shown excessive anger or used violence against her. It was now down to the jury.
And I would ask that the court attendant read the jury's verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Christian Bahina Rivera, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
Thank you, Carrie. You may be seated, please.
After 7 hours of deliberation, the jury found Christian guilty of first-degree murder. You and you alone impacted the lives of people who loved Molly Tibbetts, Judge Joel Yates declared to Christian in court.
Christian, do you have anything to say for yourself? Do you have anything to say for yourself? Are you sorry?
Since Iowa did not have the death penalty, Christian was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Can you imagine, Mr. Rivera, as a father, having Paulina's mother taken away from you and to have to tell your daughter that she will never come home? However, the most difficult person to tell was Molly's grandmother and my mother, Judy Calderwood. Judy truly believed her granddaughter would be found alive, because who could harm such a beautiful, vibrant young woman, so full of life and promise? Who could harm Judy's precious granddaughter, let alone brutally murder her and dump her body in a cornfield? This was heartbreaking news that needed to be delivered in person. I entered my mother's home and she greeted me with a big smile and asked if I wanted a cup of coffee. There certainly was no easy way to tell her the news. However, it had to be done before her phone started ringing with loved ones sending their condolences. I very quietly and softly said, "Mom, I have some bad news. They found Molly's body this morning, but we know where she is now."
Christian was also ordered to give the Tibbetts family $150,000 in restitution as part of the penalty.
Jackson County Sheriff's Department, how can I help you, please?
Yes, ma'am. I need to report my daughter missing.
Is she missing or did she run away?
No, she's missing.
And what was she wearing?
She has on a light blue coat, black pants with white stripes.
Okay.
Caitlin, or Katie Coleman, was sweet and kind. She was known for being happy, friendly, and always smiling. She was willing to help people and brighten their day in any way that she could. Mother Angie was a full-time stay-at-home mum, and Father John worked as a machinist in the local copper wire factory. John called Katie his little grease monkey and his best friend. They would work on cars together and bond. The family lived in Crothersville, Indiana, USA. Crothersville was a small town with a population of around 1,500 people. The town was thought of as safe, with parents letting their children go to the shops, the library or bank and run errands alone. Everyone knew everyone, something that gave the residents confidence that even if something should happen, others would intervene. Front doors were left unlocked. People trusted people. It was a real callback to an all-American 1950s community. By the 25th of January 2005, Katie was now 10 years old. She began the day in the same manner as she did every other day. She got up, had breakfast with the rest of her family, and then her father took her to school. Katie couldn't contain her excitement about the pajama party that was going to take place the following day at Crothersville Elementary School. At around 3 in the afternoon, Katie made her way back home from school. At this point, John was at work and Mother Angie was in the kitchen getting dinner ready. Katie, always eager to be of assistance to her mother, volunteered to walk to the nearby dollar store and purchase some toilet paper. The stock at home was getting very low. Angie agreed and handed Katie $1.10. At around 3:15 p.m, Katie left the family home and started her journey. It was only around a block and a half away. Katie had made the trip to the store quite a few times before. This was not a big deal to anyone involved. Katie made it to the dollar store at around 3:40 p.m. and picked up the toilet paper as instructed. She then checked out and started the journey home. At approximately 4 p.m, local residents that knew Katie saw her walking home along the train tracks. Katie, however, didn't come back home when she was expected. Mother Angie initially didn't show any signs of concern when Katie failed to return home right away. After all, she was a well-liked young lady who had a large number of friends who lived in the neighbourhood that she would have passed through on her way back home. Any number of these friends could have stopped Katie to chat or play. That wouldn't be an unusual occurrence. As time drew on, Mother Angie decided to call around all of the friends that lived in the neighbourhood, anyone that could have slowed Katie down on her journey. She began asking if they had seen Katie, but everyone she phoned said that they hadn't. Angie's level of concern now increased. This tight-knit community jumped into action immediately. Angie and another 120 locals began searching for 10-year-old Katie. With so few places that she could have gone, it seemed likely that she would soon turn up. But time drew on with no sign of the young girl. At 7:30 p.m, Father John contacted the police and reported Katie missing.
Jackson County Sheriff's Department, how can I help you, please?
Yes, ma'am. I need to report my daughter missing.
Is she missing or did she run away?
No, she's missing.
And what was she wearing?
She has on a light blue coat, black pants with white stripes.
Okay.
Detective Robert Simpson of the Indiana State Police was first on the scene, initially believing that Katie could just be in a friend's house or even could have run away from home. The search of the local area continued. However, Katie's parents assured the police that Katie would not have run away from home of her own free will. There were no arguments or disputes, and it just wasn't in her nature. They believed that if she could be home, she would be. The huge search team made up of concerned neighbours, family, friends and police forces searched into the night. The train track, playgrounds, shops, bodies of water and anywhere in between were all thoroughly investigated. However, in spite of their efforts, the first night turned up nothing, and then the sun rose on the second day. Now the 26th of January, this was the day that Katie was so desperately excited about. It was the day of the school pyjama party. But instead, police sniffer dogs picked up Katie's scent and traced it to the train tracks before frustratingly losing it. A helicopter hovered overhead, scouring the area, desperately searching for the 10-year-old girl. Katie's family was told some new information by a neighbour. On the day that she vanished, she had gone to their house to tell them that their dog was dead, and that it was situated down by the train tracks. This was the last recorded sighting of Katie at this time. An Amber Alert was not initially issued since there was no indication that a child had been taken from their home. But finally on January the 27th, an Amber Alert was finally issued. Katie's physical characteristics were listed on posters as having chin-length brown hair, brown eyes and standing at a height of 4 feet 6 inches tall. The last time anyone saw her, she was dressed in black tennis shoes and a red shirt, along with black sweatpants with a stripe down the thigh and a medium light blue winter coat. In addition to that, they said that Katie had what was described as a lazy eye.
You just got like 100 million things going through your head. Every time the phone rings, you're like, oh, it's her, it's her.
On January the 29th, there was a breakthrough in the case. A witness told the police that they were confident that they had seen Katie in a suspect's truck. Shortly after, her location could not be accounted for. A composite sketch was generated as a result of this information. The image of the man who was thought to have kidnapped Katie was made public and widely distributed. The male subject was said to have a very slender build. He was Caucasian, between 5 feet 8 inches and 6 feet tall. He was between 18 and 20 years old, and had dark hair and pale skin. The witness described the vehicle as a white Ford F-150 pickup truck that appeared to be tidy and well maintained. The witness estimated that the truck was roughly 15 years old. Angie and John submitted a written statement pleading for their daughter's safe return to the family. It read, "Please do not harm her. We ask that you just drop her off anywhere so that she may return to a family and community that loves her very much and misses her dearly."
I can tell you this, we will not stop. The case will never be closed until we come to find the answer.
We're waiting for you to come home, baby. We're trying. We're trying.
19 miles from Katie's house in the Cypress Lake area of Indiana. Now 5 days since she was last seen by her family, an Indiana state trooper was searching a wooded area, and there he found the body of Katie. Her wrists had been bound behind her back, Her feet were tied together. She had been sexually assaulted and then drowned in the water.
At that point, my whole world just crushed in on me. Not only did I lose my daughter, but I lost my best friend.
Police delved deeper into all of the leads that had been submitted in the investigation so far. Shortly after she was found, they were made aware of a man that lived just a few yards from the dollar store that Katie had walked to. Other residents in the neighbourhood always thought of him as a bit of an eccentric character. Neighbours recalled that he would frequently just stand outside in his yard, staring at nothing, and that he would host parties every single night. In this small community, he stuck out like a sore thumb. This man was 20-year-old Charles or Chucky Hickman. Charles called the police on himself. He then admitted to the police that he had kidnapped Katie along with another male, and he did so for the following reason. As Katie was on her way home from the dollar store, Charles claimed that she inadvertently saw a drug deal between him and Timothy C. O'Sullivan, 22 years old, and to him this was simply a case of she had seen too much. In an effort to prevent her from speaking to or informing anyone of what she saw, he said they tried to frighten her. He claimed that he and O'Sullivan took Katie first to his trailer and then took her to the creek in the middle of the night in order to terrify her into remaining silent about the incident. By now they had bound her hands and feet, and according to Charles, Katie drowned when she accidentally fell into the creek. It seemed that the case was solved, or was it?
I thought, we've got him. We've got the murderer, and he can't live with himself because he's killed a 10-year-old.
The police, on the other hand, quickly realised that Hickman's account of what had occurred with Katie was constantly shifting. Some things just weren't adding up. His inconsistent statements prompted the authorities to do additional research, during which they obtained DNA evidence from the location of the crime. At this time, DNA testing was still in its infancy, and this could take several weeks. DNA was eventually discovered on Katie's body, as well as on a discarded cigarette butt that was located nearby. And thankfully, in early April 2005, there was a match found for the DNA sample when it was entered into the database. But, shockingly, it was not for Hickman or O'Sullivan. The DNA was traced back to a man named Anthony Ray Stockelman. Although Anthony, a father of 2 young sons, was in town visiting his mother on the day that Katie vanished, he himself wasn't from Crothersville. Additionally, he drove a white pickup truck identical to the one a witness claimed to have seen Katie in as a passenger that day. Anthony's prosecution now had a compelling case. They had compared his DNA to samples recovered from Katie's body and the cigarette butt, as well as red carpet fibres from Katie's body and the carpet in Anthony's mother's house. These were a match. After being arrested, Stockelman entered a guilty plea in exchange for having the possibility of the death penalty removed from consideration. On April 17, 2005, Anthony was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. His wife, Tabitha, yelled after her husband as he was being led out of the courtroom, "Why'd you do it, Tony?" The judge had decided that Anthony Stockelman should spend the rest of his life behind bars, and for the crime of molesting Katie, he received an additional 30-year sentence. In a later appeal against the severity of its sentence, Anthony argued that he was suffering from a severe mental or emotional condition at the time of Katie's kidnapping and passing. According to Anthony's testimony, his father passed away 6 months before the incident. He said that he and his father had a close relationship, so when his father was diagnosed with cancer, he was the one that took care of him. He asserted that the loss of his father significantly affected his mental and emotional health. That defense, however, was rejected by the court, and his sentence stuck: life without parole and an additional 30 years. However, this was not Anthony's final punishment. Katie's cousin, Jared Harris, was in prison for burglary. He was incarcerated in the same prison and in the same wing as Anthony. Jared took justice into his own hands and formed a plan for an additional punishment for his cousin's killer. On September 22nd, 2006, he broke into Stockelman's cell and hid there as he waited for his opportunity. When Anthony returned, Harris slammed the door behind him, trapping him in the cell. With a DIY prison tattoo machine, he scrawled a permanent reminder on the face of Anthony. The words Katie's revenge are now permanently inked over his forehead. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? Let me know down in the comments. Join the Dark Case family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications.